They've opened the last 15 games kicking off. That means, Delano, that the Georgia Southern defense will be out on the field first, and that leads us to the key matchup tonight in this game.
That's right. The key matchup is between Alex Goforth, the big lineman for the Central Florida Knights, against either Steve Busceletti, the defensive end for Georgia Southern that we talked about in the opening, or Giff Smith, who is very talented as well at defensive end. Now, Goforth is a very big player, as we talked about, and earlier in the season, Giff Smith and Steve Busceletti have had problems with big linemen. They just can't seem to negotiate getting around them, so that should be a key matchup. And Alex Goforth, 280 pounds. Of course, at 280 pounds, he has no other choice but to go forth, right? So it's a good appropriately named.
We'll be watching here on the first possession by the Central Florida Knights to see which defensive end that Goforth will match up against. Well, we'll see that Georgia Southern kick team led out on the field by Don Norton, who is from Coral Springs, Florida. Back deep for Central Florida, we'll see Pat Stewart, number 32. Joe Ryder is our referee tonight. We'll hear from Joe throughout the game. We have a wireless mic on him, and he'll help explain things tonight. Joe Ryder, along with Ronnie Stewart, David Wilson, Mike Samples, the line judge, back judge Ted Ruda, Dan Post, the field judge, and side judge Mike Cochran. You can see the umbrella. We've had a thunder shower during warm-ups tonight. Light sprinkle right now as Don Norton tees it up. We're just about ready to get underway. Georgia Southern is 3-3, coming off 2 consecutive wins. Looks like the defending national champs are on target for the playoffs again. Central Florida Knights, in their first year of Division I AA football, are 4-2. And Central Florida believes they win tonight, they deserve, and they're probably right, they deserve a spot in the playoffs. Well, for Georgia Southern, keep your eye at the top of the screen on number 1, Donnie Suber. And back deep is Pat Stewart. Stewart on the run into the end zone, and that'll bring it up to the 20. So let's set the offense for the University of Central Florida Knights. And now the starting lineup. The quarterback is a question tonight. We've talked about that. We could see 3 quarterbacks for Central Florida. Check that again. We're going to have that one more time. The offense hustling from the sideline out onto the field. We could see 1 of 3 quarterbacks tonight. Travis Peoples is a freshman from Miami. He's the starter. Hustles up in there. In the I formation, Mark Giacone is set behind him with fullback Perry Belasis. Here's Peoples. Brett Cooper in motion. Belasis. Mark Giles sticking his nose in there. Belasis powering forward. Looks like he's got a first down.
And we talked about Alex Goforth. Who would he line up on? Well, that time he came out on Tim Brown. And you can see the replay. Alex Goforth, 76, is powering, and he really leaves a gaping hole for the runner to go through.
Belasis picking up 4 yards after initial contact. Let's take a look at our starting offensive line. Goforth, Bishop, Marsden, a 4-year starter, Lively, and Derek Connor. Again, Cooper in motion. Mark Giacone on the carry. Mike West wraps him up, but not before a gain of 5. Take a look at the starting offensive backfield for Central Florida. We'll see several different receivers tonight, and we'll see 2 different backfields. Travis People is the starting quarterback. Perry Belasis the fullback. Mark Giacone will split time with Willie English. Brett Cooper, Sean Beckton, and John Osborne, the tight end, a senior. Beckton, a senior, has a streak of 34 consecutive games in which he has caught a pass. Moving early looks like Tim Brown. Belasis shy of the first down. The flags are down.
And it looked like one of the defensive linemen for Georgia Southern jumped off sides at that time. We talked about Central Florida's offensive line and Alex Goforth, but the whole offensive line is very experienced, and they came out the first 2 plays and really blew Georgia Southern's defensive line right off the ball. And sometimes the defensive line gets a little itchy because they are being dominated, and you get an offsides.
Let's take a look at the Georgia Southern starting lineup on defense, and the defensive line has played outstanding. Joe may have forgot to turn his mic on that time. We'll work on that. We're still early underway here at the Citrus Bowl. 13:53 of the first quarter. No score. First possession for Central Florida, the team in dark. First down for Central Florida. Mark Giacone has room. Needs a block. Rodney Oglesby maybe saves a touchdown. Mark Giacone knocked down at the 32-yard line. A gain of about 25. Check that, a gain of 38. Central Florida, Delano trying to come out and prove a point. Coaches on both staffs talking about trying to establish the run.
We talked about the offensive line. Look at the gaping hole that he has to run through, and all they needed was the block from the wide receiver, and he could have been gone. Look at that. Mike West, everyone caught up in the middle because of a great offensive line surge. And there's the block I'm talking about. The wide receiver couldn't get it, or he could have gone all the way to the end zone.
After that 38-yard pickup by Giacone, Willie English comes into the eye, but this is Belasis, the fullback. And Central Florida marching right down the field and doing it on the ground. They pass the ball about 30% of the time, but here it's just hand it off and stick it through the middle.
Well, in the past, when we've talked about Central Florida, Georgia Southern games, Georgia Southern has been a team who gives up some big gashers, but they do not break. So Georgia Southern gets tough around the 20-yard line. We'll see what they can do here against the Central Florida offense.
The strength of the Georgia Southern defense, those two corners, Whitley and Oglesby, and the front four. And they need a defensive stop here on second down. Giacone met by Michael Berry, the backup linebacker. At the line of scrimmage, Giacone squirting forward, maybe a gain of 2. That'll bring up second down. Check that, third down and about 2, less than 2.
That time, Georgia Southern able to offset, that is, Central Florida's strong offensive line, and they pushed it up in there tight, and they have got to do that all night long to stop Central Florida, or they will eat them alive.
Sean Beckton out of the lineup, 2 tight ends in there. Robert Lee Connor at the top of the screen and John Osborne at the bottom. Brett Cooper is split to the top of the screen. Giacone is stopped. Did he get the first down? Doesn't look like it. We'll check for the spot. Michael Berry, listed as a reserve, very talented reserve for Georgia Southern. He has come on in his last 2 games in the 2 victories, and here we see Berry making a hit.
That's right. What a tremendous effort by Berry to plug up the hole. And yes, Central Florida is a little bit short. The first big decision of the game, and they are going for it.
Again, 2 tight ends for the Knights. Mark Giacone in the eye. Peoples, first down, Central Florida.
And Peoples running right behind the strength of his center. He says, hey, you got to stop this guy. You cannot stop his surge. And sure enough, they didn't.
Central Florida is coached by Gene McDowell. He's 50 years old. He's been here for 5 years. His record 35-26. This year, the Knights 4-2. McDowell, before coming to Central Florida, was an assistant coach at Florida State for 16 years. Belasis breaking a tackle. Mark Giles there, the free safety, along with Steve Buccialetti on the tackle. For a gain of 5, Perry Belasis, the fullback.
Pretty impressive drive so far for Central Florida, as they got the ball at their own 20-yard line, and they have marched it down, and they have not gone to the air yet. And we talked about Central Florida going to run the ball right at Georgia Southern until Georgia Southern stops them.
Second down. Giacone. Mike West shooting through the gap and stopping him for the hit at the line of scrimmage.
Mike West, one of those tremendous athletes that you love to have on his team. He is what many coaches call an overachiever, a very small guy. I'd like to call him a runt, because I was called a runt in my days. Mike West, a great player. He just wants to go all out and give his best, and a great job there of penetration.
Well, here's your first big third down of the ball game. Third down and 5.
Come on, UCF.
Giacone has blockers. Kevin Whitley makes the hit. It looks like Giacone has the first down to the 6-yard line.
You take a look at the replay, the little pitch sweep. Giacone cuts right up in between his blocking. A good job of running and a good job of stretching for that first down.
Mark Giacone, so far in 6 carries, has picked up 53 yards as they've marched right down the field on this initial drive. 9.5 minutes remaining in the first period. Georgia Southern's defense up against that goal line. Again, Giacone in the eye with the steamroller set. Giacone stacked up at about the 4. Central Florida showing 8 offensive linemen. 8 offensive linemen. They call that the steamroller set. Mike Krusek, the offensive coordinator, devised that when he came here to Central Florida. That's when they just put those, they overwhelm one side of the line, Delano, and Georgia Southern says they're prepared for it. There they get the stop after a gain of maybe 1. Second down.
That's a lot of beef, Phil. A lot of beef on that line.
Giacone still driving down to the 1-yard line. Looked like some movement on the right side of the Knight offensive line, but no flag. Looks like Tim Brown, Steve Buceletti, Michael Berry all unpiling from the stack at the 1-yard line. Third down.
Steve Buceletti did his job that time. He's the defensive end. He has contained. He came straight up the field and said, you are going to have to cut it back, and Central Florida did just that. Georgia Southern has to get tough right now.
Steamroller set to the right. Willie English up and in. Touchdown, Central Florida. Well, an impressive opening drive by Central Florida, capped off right here.
And look at Giacone. People says I'm going to hand it right off to Giacone and let him go straight at Georgia Southern. We've done it that way the whole drive. Why change now? Why do any trickery? Go straight at Georgia Southern. That's what they did, and they are on the board.
Ron Johnson, a reserve quarterback, handles the spot. Out of the hold, it's Franco Grilla. And at 8:07 of the first quarter, Central Florida jumps out in front of the Georgia Southern Eagles, 7-0. Welcome back to Orlando. Central Florida marching the ball right down the field off its initial possession. Franco Grilla's kick handled by Georgia Southern. Herman Gray. We've got a flag down. Herman Gray taking the ball up to the 27-yard line. Grilla kicking the ball away from Carl Miller. Raymond Gross will bring the Georgia Southern offense out. You can see him talking to Mike Hodges, the offensive line coach. The call you could probably hear over the PA, a clip against the Eagles. That'll push Raymond back inside his own 20, from where he'll take over for the initial possession so far. Just underway here in the Citrus Bowl. Georgia Southern in a game that has developed as a rivalry. Here's Central Florida fired up and taking the initial possession. 13 plays, 80 yards, and Willie English, the sophomore tailback, punching it over from a yard out. Let's set the Georgia Southern starting lineup. On offense, along the front, Rex Nottage, John Wilson, the only returning starter, Rusty Parrish, Miguel Ayub, a talented freshman, and Danny Smith. Raymond Gross, a senior quarterback. Joe Ross, a senior fullback. This is the flex bone, and there's Ross dumping forward for maybe a gain of 1. In the backfield for Georgia Southern, as we point out, Raymond Gross and Joe Ross, a pair of seniors. They run the flex bone, and they have slot backs. Daryl Hopkins, a junior, and Carl Miller, a versatile senior. Terrence Sorrell and Daryl Belser are the split ends, or as you finally call them, Delano, wide blockers.
That's right. They do an awful lot of blocking on the corners.
Raymond Gross, there's the pitch. Out of bounds, shy of the first down, Daryl Hopkins. It'll be third down and about 1, third down and about 2.
Well, that's what Raymond Gross does so well on that option. His primary response is to read the defensive end. When that defensive end comes down, then he is out, taking the ball from the fullback, Joe Ross, and out in the corners, and he has the option of either taking it himself or pitching the ball, and that time he pitched it.
Joe Ross met hard at the line of scrimmage. Let's run down to pick up the starting lineup on defense for Central Florida. The linebackers are their real strength. You saw Lindsey and Wisniewski and Knott across the front. Then the linebackers, Spitolski, Stewart, and the defensive back Ray Irvin is the top interceptor and the top hitter of that group. He has 3 interceptions so far this year. Now the Knights defense holds on 3rd down. Retreating deep for Central Florida. Dickinson, number 21, Mike Dickinson, a sophomore receiver. Terry Harvin back. Harvin having an All-America kind of season. Georgia Southern has excelled at special teams so far this year. Dickinson at the 43. Shane Maxwell, a linebacker, down there to make initial contact. We're still in the first period in Orlando. 6:50 remaining in the first.
Georgia Southern University, our tradition of excellence, our quality of life, our spirit and pride have made us one of the fastest growing campuses in the nation. The momentum of the campus continues to grow, along with Southern's reputation for academic excellence. The quality of life enjoyed at this mid-sized university compares with the best in the South. So for a great education in an ideal setting, we're Georgia Southern University.
Pick up the Central Florida drive on 2nd down. Willie English, maybe a gain of 2. We apologize for missing 1st down, but University of Central Florida Athletic Director and head coach Gene McDowell has decided tonight to go ahead and not comply with the television timeouts and go ahead and play the game. So occasionally we will miss a play.
Boo, boo.
I feel like Lindsey Nelson and Paul Horning on those old Notre Dame playbacks. After the Terry Harvin punt, we move to further action in the first period. Well, Delano, let's see if the defense of Georgia Southern can set a tempo here, because certainly Central Florida's offense just rammed that ball right down the field on its first possession. That's Willie English in the eye. Peoples looking for Becton. Picked off. Jim Mutimer at the 30 and out of bounds. Jim Mutimer, the junior from Dunwoody.
And many of you might question exactly why Central Florida was throwing the ball that time. Well, sometimes you have to mix it up because Georgia Southern is a very smart team. You see Peoples over the middle. He's trying to hit Sean Becton. And what a play by Mutimer across the middle. That is what a safety is supposed to do. And once again, a nice pass by Peoples, but he just doesn't see Mutimer coming over the top. Mutimer playing center field, so to speak, for the Georgia Southern defense.
Jim Mutimer's first interception of the year. That makes now that all 4 defensive backfield members have an interception. And that's the 8th interception of the year for Georgia Southern's team. An 11-yard return by Jim Mutimer. Penalty against Georgia Southern. Didn't exactly pick that up. That'll march the ball back to the 19-yard line, where Georgia Southern's offense will take over for the 2nd time tonight. That's the 3rd penalty against Georgia Southern, marked off for a total of 35 yards. Last game at Marshall 2 weeks ago, the Eagles penalized 10 times for over 80 yards. That was a problem. In fact, penalties were the biggest statistic of that well-fought game up in Marshall 2 weeks ago.
They were lucky to get out alive with 10 penalties, and they certainly can't afford that tonight. Central Florida playing a very good game right now. Just one mistake, and Georgia Southern has the ball back.
Joe Ross again on that bread and butter dive play by the fullback, trying to test the middle of the Central Florida defense. Not much there. Last year in this game, Central Florida jumped out in front, led at the end of 3 periods, 14-13. But in the 4th period, Georgia Southern scored twice. Lester Efer, the backup fullback, punching it across a couple of times. 3 key turnovers really hurt Central Florida. And Georgia Southern won that game 31-17 in front of about 20,000 at Paulson Stadium in Statesboro. Joe Ross. Bob Spitolski got a fistful of jersey and also got a ride of about 4 yards behind Joe Ross, the senior fullback.
And what a play that time by Bob Spitolski. He is the defensive end. He has the job of trying to guard against Raymond Gross, as you see on the end. Watch him. He's guarding Raymond Gross, and then he goes over and gets Joe Ross, and he gets him, he collars him, and rides him down. That is an outstanding play by Spitolski.
We'll keep an eye on number 56, Spitolski, the junior from Orlando, and on number 42, Rick Hamilton, the 2 most active members of the Central Florida defense. 3rd down and short. Raymond hit hard by Spitolski, dropped for a 4-yard loss. That'll bring up 4th down.
Really, I think that time there was confusion in the backfield. It looked like the motion man, Carl Miller, may have left too soon. It looked like Joe Ross was also in motion. It could have been called for illegal motion, and Raymond Gross had no chance to get around the charging defensive lineman. He is caught.
Spitolski leads the Knights in sacks with 3, and that's an example of his quickness. Oh, Harvin gets pressure, and he goes down. Down goes the flag. Dickinson at his 33. Dancing, and he'll go down.
Now this will be very interesting, Phil, because it looked as if the player was blocked into Terry Harvin. We'll have to see when we come back.
Well, let's take a break from Orlando. Georgia Southern down early with 4 minutes left in the first. On the first down of the drive, Joe Ross picking up 7 yards on the traditional Georgia Southern dive play. This brings up 2nd down and 3. There's the pitch. Carl Miller, 1st down, has speed, and he has room. Nice move down inside the 10-yard line. Carl Miller, Jimmy Roberts, number 3, was the first to get there, but Shane Law brings him down. Carl Miller bolting for a gain of 46.
Well, Carl Miller, the all-purpose back for Georgia Southern, really a talented athlete. A lot of people think he has a chance to move on to the pros, and you see the replay. There's the option. Raymond Gross does a good job of getting the pitch off quickly. If we can follow it, you'll see Carl Miller running down the sideline. He is gone because he has great speed, and look at the nice move there to get up, pick up about 5 extra yards.
1st down at the 10 for Tim Stowers' club. Gross going to roll and tuck it in to the 5, maybe to the 4. Raymond Gross with a gain of about 6. So now it looks like the Eagles are answering that game opening drive by Central Florida. Georgia Southern has dominated this series between 2 fierce rival teams, even though Central Florida has been a Division II team so far. Let's take another look at that play, Delano.
We talk about Carl Miller being an all-purpose player. He was out there on the lead blocking Val Spitolski, making room for Raymond Gross. So Carl Miller, an outstanding player. We'll see a lot of him tonight.
Central Florida defense caught shuffling on and off players, so they take a timeout. We will too. We have 2:58 remaining in the first period. Georgia Southern is knocking on the door here in the Citrus Bowl. Georgia Southern on 2nd down at the 5. The pitch, Joe Ross has a block. Touchdown, Georgia Southern. Joe Ross bowling his way in, taking a hit and taking it on into the end zone.
Well, of course, we had talked about Joe Ross as far as him not being as mobile as he once was because of knee surgery. But that time he took it up, and he does look as if he is able to cut. Look at Raymond. This is the 17 play. Georgia Southern options left to the fullback, Joe Ross. Watch him bowl over Shane Law. Get out of the way.
Mike Dowis comes on for the extra point out of the spot of Terry Harvin. Up, and it's good. And with 2:53 in the first period, Georgia Southern and rival Central Florida are locked up at 7 on the scoreboard. Delano, the key in that drive. Georgia Southern running the ball. First 3 times they stuck it on the ground, a gain of 1, and then a couple of losses. The last 3 runs in that drive, Carl Miller rips off a 46-yarder, a 7-yarder by Ross, and then the 4-yard touchdown by Joe Ross. Let's take another look.
And here's another look at the play. Look at Daryl Hopkins outside the slot back on the left side, blocking, clearing it out for Joe Ross. And we talked about Carl Miller being an exceptional athlete. What about Daryl Hopkins? He can do it all, too. He's out there blocking for Joe Ross. Hey, Joe should buy them dinner tonight.
Joe Ross putting some old-fashioned South Georgia style of football on display by putting his head down and showing some determination. We don't bring up that term. Paul Lounsbury, the assistant head coach of Central Florida, calls it South Georgia style football, the type that we'll see on display here tonight, and he calls it all out all the time. At 6 o'clock each Wednesday on the Sports South Network, you can see Tim Stowers recap the game from the following week, from the previous weekend, and then look ahead to the previous opponent. That's the Tim Stowers Show, Wednesday, Georgia Southern Football 90, Wednesdays at 6 o'clock on Sports South.
Every time Georgia Southern and Central Florida get together, there seem to be fireworks, and this game looks like it is developing into that tonight.
This is the 9th game of a series between these two teams, and what's changed is that Central Florida is now a member of the Division I AA. They've been Division II until this year. Eagles lead the series 7-1. Tight games throughout, as is the case tonight. Here's Don Norton's boot, and Pat Stewart is deep at the 6. Loose ball, tiptoes, and he stepped out of bounds. Sure did. They're going to mark it inside the 5-yard line.
Oh boy, and you can certainly not give Georgia Southern's crazy kick cover team, as they are called, the KKK, a chance to get down there, because they blow all ears back and get down there quickly, and he made a mistake, and that really cost Central Florida.
Georgia Southern's drive, 81 yards on 7 plays. There's your 2-minute drill on the ground. Let's take another look at Pat Stewart. Fields it cleanly, steps right on the line right there. Just an example of the rain and slippery conditions tonight, Delano. This field will handle plenty of wetness. We were out there before the game. It had rain before the game, and it was not a factor, but now a light drizzle has turned to a heavy rain off and on.
You see Coach Tim Stowers down on the sideline talking to his offensive line.
Mark Giacone in the eye from his own end zone. Met hard. Tim Brown, Pat Parr, the nose man right there. Looks like Ron Johnson also getting up off the pile. Georgia Southern has enjoyed success in this series here in the Citrus Bowl. They're 3-0. Last time here, another wild game, 28,000 fans. Eagles pulled it out 31-17 back in 1988. It's 2nd down. Giacone. Jim Mutimer. Mark Giles can't bring him down. Nice move by Giacone to elude Jim Mutimer's grasp. Gain of about 8. 3rd down and short.
We talked about Georgia Southern's offensive backs throwing good blocks. Number 27 for Central Florida, Perry Balassi, threw a good block that time to spring the runner.
Balasis, and also backup tight end Robert Lee Connor, number 81, a converted defensive tackle, also in there to tight end spot. Here's Giacone behind Balasis and behind Travis Peoples, the freshman quarterback, on 3rd down. Flea flicker. Kevin Whitley almost picks it off. The intended receiver, Brett Cooper. But Rodney Oglesby and Kevin Whitley matching him stride for stride. Travis Peoples unloads from his own 5 across midfield, about 50 yards on the fly. So with under a minute and a half here in the first period, Russ Salerno, a junior from Orlando, will stand in his own end zone. Rodney Oglesby retreating to the 40-yard line to accept this punt, the first of the night for Salerno. The return is on, but Oglesby will flag it and chase it down at about the 41-yard line. Not a very good punt. Russ Salerno for 30 yards on his initial try tonight. Well, Georgia Southern coming off a bye, a week off, as is Central Florida, both also coming off headstrong wins. Georgia Southern picked off a win up at Marshall 2 weeks ago, coming from behind in the last minute and a half, and Raymond Gross leading that drive down to the 1-yard line. Alonzo McGee then capped it off with 30 seconds remaining. Georgia Southern beat Marshall 17-14. Gross to Joe Ross, piling forward and running right at Bob Spitalski there on the right, and moving the pile forward for a gain of about 3.
If we go back to those last series of plays on the 3rd down play for Central Florida, not really a bad idea. Georgia Southern had been playing aggressive defense, so why not try to suck them in with a little trick play? And it would have worked if Kevin Whitley was not such a good defensive player back there.
Clock on the move, under 50 seconds in the first period. Raymond Gross has room to run. Going to throw. Terrence Sorrell trying to slip one tackle. First down down to the 22-yard line. 1st and 10, Georgia Southern. Terrence Sorrell.
And I think that is the very thing that is so dangerous about Georgia Southern's offense. Raymond Gross can fake the option, drop back, and he rolled to the other side wide open. He could have run for about 10 to 15 yards, but Terrence Sorrell did a good job of coming back to the ball, smelling that his quarterback was in trouble.
Sorrell shedding Jimmy Roberts, the left cornerback, on that gain of 18. 34 seconds remaining in the first period. Ross on the pitch. Nothing there whatsoever. Daryl Hopkins, the slot back and intended lead blocker, slipped down in the backfield, and we have an official's timeout. Talked about Georgia Southern coming off a good win up at Huntington, West Virginia. Central Florida won at Samford 2 weeks ago up in Birmingham. Let's take another look at this. Joe is exposed out there by the defense.
And that was the same play that Georgia Southern ran down on the goal line for the touchdown. But that time, as you mentioned, Daryl Hopkins slipped and could not pick up the key block to spring Joe Ross.
Central Florida this year moving up to Division I AA. They're trying to crack the top 20. They're 4-2. Try to pick up the number of that jersey of who's down on the field right now. Central Florida at 4-2 this year. What the move to Division I AA does for the program, for Coach Gene McDowell, is it adds 25 more scholarships. And here in the talent-rich state of Florida, that's enough to make a haul. That's Larry Salazar, senior linebacker, leading tackler on the team a year ago, had an outstanding game against Georgia Southern a year ago, had 11 tackles up in Statesboro. Here he's being helped off the field, but he'll be all right, the senior from Hialeah, Florida. Just so happens Central Florida is linebacker Rich, Bill Stewart, and Rick Hamilton also very active there in the middle. Second down and about 10 for Georgia Southern.
Some of the kids on the sideline having a good time. The rain has stopped here momentarily, and everyone is having a ball.
Chuck McClurg and Darrell Belser split at the bottom of the screen. That's flags. And the huddle clock may have expired on Raymond Gross.
I think they're saying that it is illegal procedure against number 59 for the offense.
Well, the call was false start. Not a legal procedure. Don't even know if they got up to the line of scrimmage on that one. Down to our last 7 seconds of the first period. Now McClurg all the way to the bottom, and that's Darrell Belser in the slot. The pitch. Plenty of room. Touchdown, Georgia Southern. Daryl Hopkins takes the pitch. Outstanding blocking by his wide receivers, and Hopkins goes 27 yards on the last play of the first period, and Georgia Southern takes the lead.
Well, we talked about Georgia Southern having wide blockers. We mean by that term, look at number 80, Darrell Belser in the corner. You see his man, number 11, Eric Buckley, running behind the play. That's because Belser got enough on him to keep him from getting to the running back for the touchdown.
Hal Radford snap, and Mike Dowis makes it a 14-7 ball game. So the first period ends with a bang. Let's take a timeout. After one period of play, Georgia Southern leads Central Florida by a touchdown. Raymond Gross on that bread and butter flex bone, and this is where it works to its best, Delano.
And now you can see the good block by Darrell Belser thrown on Eric Buckley. Eric Buckley was completely taken out of the play, and we saw Coach Tim Stowers, and you see him now getting on the offensive line just a few minutes ago, and they came right out on the field and responded. And did they ever respond?
When Don Norton puts his foot into it, that'll be the first play of the second quarter. So we're still underway here at the Citrus Bowl on a soggy, very summer-like summer night here in the heart of football season. Back deep for Central Florida is speedy Pat Stewart. On a line drive knuckleball, that's Stewart at the 5. Up to the 25, Donnie Suber there. Patrick Stewart with a 21-yard return to open up the second quarter. Well, let's keep our eye on this quarterback situation for Central Florida. Travis Peoples is the freshman from Miami. He comes out and starts the game, but in each of the 6 games so far for Central Florida, they have changed quarterbacks. On the scoring drive, Georgia Southern in only 1:17, a minute 17, working 41 plays. And the big play, of course, Daryl Hopkins dashing 27 yards. Out of the split backfield, here's Pat Stewart. Mike West making contact. Stewart with a gain of 3. Should Coach Gene McDowell or offensive coordinator Mike Krusek decide to pull Travis Peoples, they always go to Rudy Jones, a junior. He's the next in line. And Ron Johnson, another junior, the holder on placements, will also be standing by.
And Coach Stowers, I was talking to him earlier today, and he says the fact that they do have that inconsistency at quarterback and not knowing who is going to stay in for how many plays is certainly a help to Georgia Southern.
Travis Peoples looking for his tight end, batted down. Looks like Curtis Gordon. Is that ball still loose? Willie English smothers it, but that's an incomplete pass. Travis Peoples now 0 for 3. Intercepted one time, nearly picked off the second, and in his third attempt is batted down. In this series, we go back to 1983, back in old Womack Field, when Central Florida picked up a win in this series.
Yes, I remember that game well. I was playing in that football game, and we lost that 33-29 in 95-degree heat. It was something else.
The wildest one back in 1987. Coaches today still talking about that one from 3 years ago. Peoples on third down. As Valasis, check that Montel Green. Montrell Green picks up the first down. Nice call by Mike Krusek, the offensive coordinator of Central Florida.
Well, look, that time is the outside linebacker, Michael Berry, we talked about earlier, a tremendous player, comes in from the outside. He is on a blitz, but his man is wide open on the sideline, and he's got some big yardage. Rodney Oglesby does a good job of avoiding the tackle, getting on the tackle. Avoiding the block, that is, excuse me.
First connection of the game for Travis Peoples. Spots the ball at the 46-yard line. Cooper in motion. Valasis. Not much doing there. Not only does Central Florida rotate quarterbacks, not only do they rotate tailbacks, they also rotate fullbacks. That's Barry Valasis, a 5'9", 180-pound senior from West Palm Beach. We saw Montrell Green, a junior, 185-pounder from Albany, Georgia. Montrell Green, one of 3 Georgia natives who play on this Central Florida team.
So what are you saying, Phil? This team is very deep, huh?
They have depth in the backfield and at the receiver position. Georgia Southern has depth and speed on defense. Second down. Peoples. Becton. Rodney Oglesby falls down, and Becton out of bounds at the 25-yard line. And Sean Becton stretches that school record consecutive game streak to now 35 games.
And Peoples had all day to throw, thanks in part to Derek Connor, his offensive lineman. You see him force Steve Busceletti wide, and Busceletti cannot get anywhere close to Peoples. A good block by Derek Connor.
Second connection of the game for Travis Peoples to Sean Becton. Picks up a chunk. That's 20. That makes it first down and 10 at the 26-yard line. Movement on the line. David Swift, the right tackle, a backup tackle. Looks like he moves first, and we see a litter of yellow out there.
Dead ball foul, false start. Central Florida still first.
We apologize for our technical difficulty. We're going to try to get that thing ironed out here before this night's over. David Swift trying to get an early advantage on Tim Brown, and here we see
Larry Salazar being taken off, walking off on crutches, and we certainly hope that isn't very, very serious.
That'll put a dent in the linebacker depth for Central Florida. Nice move by Montrell Green, cutting up, or check that, Willie English cutting up field. He was almost hemmed in. Michael Berry back there in the backfield in a hurry. Michael Berry, we talk about speed on defense for Georgia Southern, and he was back there in a hurry.
That's right, and downfield even farther. You can see the wide receivers and the defensive backs for Central Florida and Georgia Southern really going at it. Brett Cooper that time rolled up Kevin Whitley. They call it the roll block, and those defensive backs don't like when the wide receivers do that.
Travis Peoples facing second down and 14. Getting pressure. Looking for a screen. Going to throw that one away. Oh, was caught by Valasis. Perry Valasis, the fullback, faked to him, looked to a screen to him, Almost got him on the sideline. That'll bring up 3rd down and long. Here still early in the second quarter.
Well, it was a good job by Peebles as he strung out the play, and then when he did throw the ball, he made sure that anybody got it, it would be his player and no one on the Georgia Southern defense. So a heads-up play by Travis Peebles.
Into the Georgia Southern defense, we see freshman Alex Mash, number 99, and see a couple of extra defensive backs. Brad Allman, number 27, a safety. Peoples on 3rd and 14. He's going to put it up. There's Becton, picked off. Rodney Oglesby, number 19, second interception of the ball game, and Georgia Southern takes over deep in its own territory. Rodney Oglesby comes up with his 3rd interception of the season. 11 minutes remaining in the first half. We'll take time out and be back at the Citrus Bowl on the Georgia Southern Sports Network.
Now available on videotape, the amazing college football success story of Irk Russell and the Georgia Southern Eagles, filled with over 60 minutes of some of the most exciting football, including 3 national championships, packed with never-before-available footage of some of the best college games ever played. It's a must for any football fan, and it's only $29.95. It's the story of Irk Russell, the miracle worker of college football.
One of the emotional leaders of the Georgia Southern defense, Mike West, being helped off the field, the middle linebacker, and we get a middle linebacker's view of this turnover.
One of the reasons Peebles was forced into this bad pass, ill-advised pass to Rodney Oglesby was because the defensive line for Georgia Southern is getting a very good rush right now. Steve Busceletti, Giv Smith, and Tim Brown are all getting through Central Florida's offensive line.
But Tim Stowers' lines on offense and defense starting to operate. Looks like Lester Eford pounding forward. Check that. It's Joe Ross on the give. Or nope, we were right first time. Lester Eford. Boy, what are the chances? Central Florida loses a valuable linebacker and Larry Salazar, a senior. Now Georgia Southern has Mike West go down, a valuable senior middle linebacker.
Always a very tough and physical game between Georgia Southern and Central Florida. We certainly don't like to see a lot of injuries, but you can't expect them.
Lester Eford, the sole setback, and Raymond Gross going to put it on. Up to the 20, hit hard. Up to the 15-yard line, looks like a first down for Georgia Southern.
And really right now at this point, you just can't say enough about Georgia Southern's offensive backs and the blocking job they're doing. Look at Raymond Gross rolling right, rolling left, and look at Lester Eford as he clears out and leaves a big hole for Raymond Gross, and Raymond Gross tucks it up and goes right in.
Rick Hamilton, the leading tackler on this team, made the first hit on Raymond Gross, and now we have another Central Florida player down on the field. If you want to compare how the 2 seasons have gone so far, 3-3 Georgia Southern, 4-2 Central Florida, they have only one common opponent. Eastern Kentucky, the top-ranked and unbeaten team in Division I AA, Roy Kidd's Colonels, having perhaps their best year up in Richmond. Let's take a look at the injuries, see if we can pick out who that is. Eric Buckley, maybe? There he is. Eric Buckley, the strong safety, a junior from Merritt Island, Florida, gets a knee caught in there and goes down, and he is limping off, but he looks like he's okay. Eric Buckley, a product of that powerhouse high school program at Merritt Island, although the Knights lost yesterday. High school football being played because of the encephalitis scare. High school football in this area is being played on Friday afternoons and Saturday mornings now. Lester Eford fighting his way forward, maybe for a gain of 2. The only common opponent between these 2 teams, Eastern Kentucky, back on the 2nd week of the year. Central Florida travels up to Richmond, Kentucky, and loses 24-14. 2 weeks later, the Eastern Kentucky Colonels travel to Statesboro. Georgia Southern led that game early, but 3 critical turnovers turned it around, and Eastern Kentucky won 42-34. We have 10.5 minutes remaining in the first half from the Citrus Bowl. Gross has time, and a receiver, Darrell Belser. He runs out of bounds at the 48-yard line. Gain of make that a gain of 34 yards. Raymond Gross had plenty of time. Delano, you talked about the offensive line, and he does have time here.
Raymond Gross fakes the option, steps back, and he throws to Daryl Belser, whose job is to find the seam between the safety and the cornerback. That's what he did that time, and a little bit more speed, and he could have been off to the races. A nice job by Shane Law catching up with Daryl Belser.
Georgia Southern leading by a touchdown, 14-7, late in the first half. And getting ready to add another. Darrell Hopkins breaking free. Touchdown, Georgia Southern. Again, he explodes through the line. That offensive line opens a hole. He gets blocking downfield, and Georgia Southern can take a 2-touchdown lead.
Oh my goodness, and Raymond Gross is just so explosive on the option. As you see the replay, look, he's got 2 men on him. He's only supposed to have 1. Number 43, Bill Stewart, was caught up and was not supposed to let Raymond Gross get that pitch outside, and then Darrell Hopkins was off to the races, and a fine job of running.
Number 13, Mike Dallas.
By Darrell Hopkins.
Darrell Hopkins having a ball game in the first half. He already has totaled 79 yards on only 3 carries. Mike Dallas is up and is good. And Georgia Southern with 10:17 remaining in the first period. Eagles take a 2-touchdown lead, 21-7. If there has been a dominant theme for Georgia Southern since falling to 1-3 early in the season, it has been improvement. They showed demonstrating great improvement in beating Northeast Louisiana, then Marshall, and now the Georgia Southern Eagles are out in front of the Central Florida Knights 21-7 with 10 minutes remaining in the first half. Pat Stewart at his 8. As a hole, Don Norton there. Don Norton, the kicker, and then Chuck McClurg getting contact, and after a gain of 25, we see flags go down.
Dead ball foul, personal foul on the return.
Well, if you could read lips, we would see personal foul against the Georgia Southern Eagles.
And I guarantee you, when that player who made the personal foul gets over to the sideline, he is going to get a lot of flack from Tim Stowers. On the touchdown again, Darrell Hopkins cutting up. Look at the lead block from number 50 of Georgia Southern, Rusty Parrish. He gets out there and springs Darrell Hopkins. And once again, Darrell Hopkins may ought to buy Rusty Parrish lunch. That was a good block by Rusty Parrish.
Well, let's keep an eye on the Central Florida backfield. Travis Peoples has been picked off twice so far. Knights take over an outstanding field position at the 48. Brett Cooper on the run. Mark Giacone straight ahead. Jane Maxwell and Jim Utemer going for a ride. Some power. You can see those knees pumping, those thighs driving.
Certainly been a long time since we've seen Central Florida attack straight at Georgia Southern's offense. They were really dominating on the first drive, and then the second drive, they went away with a couple of trick plays. And now they're trying to go back to it and dance with who got you to the party, or whatever, however you say it. Again,
we see Georgia Southern on the quick strike and doing it on the ground. There's Buckley, the junior strong safety, headed off the field and into the Knight locker room. 2nd down and 2. Giacone, there's the first down. Up to the 37-yard line. Giacone, had he not bumped into his own center, Craig Marsden, may have picked up some more.
This looks like Central Florida's first drive all over again. Watch number 76 go for it, take out the defensive linebacker for Georgia Southern, and that just opens up a big hole for Giacone. And I guarantee you this time you will not see Central Florida go away. They are going to run it until Georgia Southern will stop them.
Already Mark Giacone's 12th carry, totaling 80 yards here. 9 minutes remaining in the first half. More room. Jim Utemer there. Picks up a first down, Mark Giacone does. Make that his 13th carry of the ball game.
And you're sitting at home and you're saying, why did Central Florida go away from it to begin with? Well, you want to get a little bit of variety in your offense. And you see Giacone, look at the blocking there by number 65 for Central Florida, Tom Lapley. A great job by the offensive line. Great offensive surge by Central Florida.
Georgia Southern linebacker Michael Berry from Harper High School in Atlanta gets up out of the pile woozy. He's being helped off the field now. Giacone, a good story. Comes down from New Jersey on spring break during high school, takes a look around the Orlando area and says, I can do this. Get some information on the team, and here he is. Mark Giacone from Westfield, New Jersey.
Well, who can beat Central Florida as a recruiting ground for young people coming on spring break or whatever it might be? It's a gorgeous place to be, and they are often swept away by this area.
Giacone comes out of the lineup, and Willie English in there in the eye in the steamroller set. Not much doing. Patrick Parr, the nose man, out of Troup County, there to make the stop. Looks like he's got the first down, though, and he does. Between Giacone, Willie English, and Pat Stewart, the three tailbacks, they average about 129 yards a game on the ground, and they've scored 13 of the team's 17 touchdowns so far this year.
They are the go-to backs for the Central Florida Knights, no doubt about it.
8.5 minutes remaining in the first half. Giacone back in there in the eye. Finding some room off left tackle. Giacone running behind big 280-pound junior tackle Alex Goforth.
Talk about a big pulling guard, 280 pounds coming right at you. That can be very, very damaging for a lot of players on defense wondering about injury, because he is a really big fella and he comes at you with everything he has got.
Knights trailing by 2 touchdowns, and they're on the move at the 22. Giacone. Steve Busaletti right there was unblocked, and Mark Giacone ran right at him. That'll bring up 3rd down and short.
And I think the offensive back in the backfield, back in the eye, got away with a little bit of a false start there, but the referees just didn't see it.
But this has been a ground battle so far. They're fighting it out on the ground. Georgia Southern 166 yards all game, almost a week ago, rather 2 weeks ago. Giacone on 3rd down, met up in the air by Jim Mutimer. We'll have to measure for 3rd down.
That's exactly what you have to do on defense when you have those short yardage situations. You have to meet the running back if he is going to jump over the top at the point of attack, and look at the good job by Georgia Southern.
Well, if we can eyeball the spot of the ball at the just outside the 15 and then take a look at the sticks all the way across the field, that should be a 1st down. It is. Well, talk about buckle up the chin straps, fight it out in the trenches. Central Florida with 11 first downs, moving up and down the field. This is their 2nd best drive after on their initial possession going 80 yards. Georgia Southern, however, has scored 3 touchdowns on big plays, also on the ground. Mark Giacone behind the steamroller, offensive line set. Lunging inside the 10. Rodney Oglesby there on the tackle. Nick Davis, the freshman middle linebacker from Griffin, also there.
Look at the gaping hole here for Central Florida. And what we said earlier, Central Florida is not going to, I guarantee you, you will not see a pass on this drive. They're going to run it on all 3 downs down here in Georgia Southern territory.
Big Alex Goforth hustling off the field, limping off the field. He comes out of there, but they still have 2 tight ends. Mark Giacone, nothing doing. Looks like Patrick Parr gets penetration and drops him at the line of scrimmage. Flags are down.
There's holding on Central Florida.
And a big break for Georgia Southern, down low, down deep in their territory. A big holding call against the Knights.
Keep your eye on that Georgia Southern defensive front. Patrick Parr, Curtis Gordon,
2nd round,
and Tim Brown. Central Florida coaches having lots of respect for Tim Brown, number 94 of Georgia Southern. The word they got from the Florida State coaches is they called him an SEC type of player. paid him the highest compliment, said he could start for Florida, Miami, or Florida State. They were very impressed with Tim Brown. He's having an outstanding season, and that's why.
That is one heck of a comment to say about a Division I AA player, that he can go right in and start for a Division I team, especially Division I teams of the caliber of Florida State, Miami, and Florida.
9th play of the drive with 6 minutes remaining in the first half. 2 wide receivers, Becton to the bottom of the screen. That's Cooper in motion. Travis Peoples looking for Becton. Out of the backfield, Belasis by Ronald Johnson. Still on his feet. Rodney Oglesby makes the hit. And Perry Belasis inside the 10, down to the 9-yard line. For a gain.
And there you see Travis Peoples setting up nicely in the pocket. And over on the sideline is Perry Belasis, wide open.
3rd completion of the night for freshman quarterback Travis Peoples. He's hit on 3 for 51 yards. Big 3rd down and 4. English met. Shy of the first down. Fumble. Georgia Southern excited. There's a loose ball. Let's see who has it. Looked like maybe a knee was down. We'll wait. Georgia Southern comes out of there, and that's Eagle football.
And I think Mark Giles was the man who came up with it. You see the man going through the line, Willie English. He is hit. Michael Berry, you see the ball coming up right there by Michael
Giles
Berry.
makes the hit, strips the ball, and makes the recovery. Mark Giles coming off a monster game 2 weeks ago against Marshall. Had an interception, also had a sack, and was in double figures in tackles. Mark Giles, one of the most improvement has been the word for Georgia Southern on offense and defense, and Mark Giles, one of the most improved players out of Northside High School in Warner Robins. 5 minutes remaining in the first half. Again, Gross from deep in his own territory. Still on his feet. All that running, maybe a gain of 6.
And every yard that he got could be attributed to Carl Miller. I don't know if we have the chance to look at that again, but Carl Miller on the corner, the slot back, you will watch him. He veers out and he takes out the defensive linebacker, number 43 for Central Florida, Bill Stewart. A great block by Carl Miller.
The word improvement, that also applies to the senior quarterback, Raymond Gross. After fumbling the ball 10 times in the first 4 games, Georgia Southern has not fumbled, lost the fumble in the last 2. Joe Ross on the pitch, first down, powering his way up to the 24-yard line.
Right now, Raymond Gross seems to be making the pitches that he needs to make when he needs to make them. And if Raymond Gross continues to do that, it will be a long night for Central Florida. Talk about Raymond Gross. We talk about him being maybe not as confident behind an offensive line earlier in the season, that maybe was not as polished as he has been accustomed to. But Raymond Gross feeling a little bit more confident behind that offensive line now, and it's showing tonight here against Central Florida.
Senior fullback Joe Ross, 9 carries, 32 yards. Raymond's going to keep it, and he's going to go down. Bob Spitalski bringing up the end, but there first is Bob Knott and Robert Lindsay, the defensive ends.
Even though Georgia Southern did not pick up any yardage on that play, it seemed like every player for Central Florida was over there on the left side against Raymond Gross. It was still a good sign because Raymond Gross, look, he's caught, he knows he's caught. He can pitch it right now, but that's dangerous. He knows it's dangerous, and he eats the football. That is a good play by Raymond Gross.
Georgia Southern out in front by a pair of touchdowns. Central Florida scores first. Raymond will call a timeout. Central Florida took their initial possession right down the field. Took the lead 7-0, but Georgia Southern has answered with 3 touchdowns. So let's take a timeout here on the Georgia Southern Sports Network. Georgia Southern on 2nd down. Raymond Gross, loose ball, and he'll go down for a loss of 5.
Raymond Gross having problems with the snap, and you never know whether that is on the part of the center or the quarterback, but they need to get that worked out. That could be a very deadly situation for Georgia Southern. Central Florida would like to see that again. Very physical game so far, and Georgia Southern taking the 2-touchdown lead.
It looked like the football got up in the hands of Raymond Gross. It just slipped out of his hands.
Exactly.
3rd down and 15. Gross going to try it again. Has Terrence Sorrell. Incomplete. Boy, that's the magic of Raymond Gross. Back to throw, tucks it in, backs up a few strides, and lets fly for his 3rd pass of the night. He's 2 for 3, and that's only his 1st incompletion of the night. So Terry Harvin, the All-American candidate, standing back at the 5-yard line. And Mike Dickinson back at the 45. Fair catch at the 48-yard line. Mike West averaging about 40 yards a punt, 9th in the nation in Division I AA.
Boy, that is a tremendous asset to have a punter like Terry Harvin. And even that time, he didn't get much distance on the punt, but his hang time was tremendous, probably somewhere around 4 or 5 seconds of hang time. No chance for a return for Central Florida.
The physical nature of this game taking its toll already. We just received word that senior linebacker Larry Salazar has a hyperextended knee. He was helped off the field earlier in the 1st half. He is not expected to play in the 2nd half. Here's Mark Giacone in the eye behind Travis Peoples. Brett Cooper in motion. Giacone. Tim Brown, number 94, makes the tackle, maybe a gain of 1.
Right now, Tim Brown, Steve Busceletti, Gibb Smith, the whole defensive line for Georgia Southern doing a very good job. We talked about Georgia Southern being a team that bends, but they do not break.
On 2nd down with 2.5 minutes remaining. And David Swift, for the 2nd time, is whistled for moving a little bit early on the Central Florida line.
But you really can't take anything away from Central Florida.
False start. Central Florida. 2nd down.
That's going to hurt. 2:23 remaining in the 1st half. Knights haven't generated much on the board since the first time they touched the ball, and they just rammed it right down the field. Had a good drive going last time they had the ball, but it ended in the turnover. With a split backfield, here's Peoples from his 46. Getting pressure. Loose ball. Oh, Gibb Smith nearly got a hand on it. Steve Busceletti and Tim Brown pouring in on the freshman Travis Peoples.
We talked about them getting good penetration now, and they are just pinning their ears back and saying, stop us if you can. And you see Steve Busceletti coming from the top of your screen. The offensive line is late getting to his block, and Busceletti causes the pass breakup.
A junior from Gainesville, Georgia. From Gainesville, Busceletti had a pair of sacks 2 weeks ago and has 6 sacks so far this year. He's having an outstanding game. Georgia Southern is winning this game on the line of scrimmage. 2 minutes remaining in the 1st half from the Citrus Bowl. Welcome back to the Citrus Bowl in Orlando. Phil Van Horn and Delano Little here just before halftime. 2 minutes, 11 seconds remaining. 3rd down and 12 for Tim Stowers' defense. They're putting the pressure on Travis Peoples. Again, Busceletti. And again, he'll go down. And a flag is down.
Well, the flag is obvious holding against Steve Busceletti. The man guarding him obviously almost tackled Steve Busceletti because he had tremendous position on him.
Holding. Central Florida.
Well, the Knights started at about midfield, but they're moving backwards now.
And you can see Steve Busceletti getting good penetration. And number 74 for Central Florida, Derek Connor. Hey, he takes him down. He's a good wrestler, huh?
Let's dance. Now 2 minutes and 2 seconds remaining in the 1st half. Well, after falling behind early in this game, Georgia Southern has come out and established a tempo with both offensive and defensive lines.
That's right. Georgia Southern really dominated on the first offensive drive by Central Florida. But go over there to the sidelines and you adjust. You make adjustments to different things, to different guards pulling, to different tackles cracking down on you. And Georgia Southern has done a good job. Kudos to the Georgia Southern coaching staff for making those adjustments.
Still coming on the Georgia Southern schedule, Savannah State next weekend in Statesboro. Then the James Madison Dukes, November 3rd. That's a TV game. Then November 17th in Statesboro there at Allen Paulson Stadium. We'll have Terry Bowden, the coach of Samford, coming over from Birmingham. Russ Salerno fields it on a hop, just gets it off. Rodney Oglesby at the 30. Not much room down at the 32, and a flag goes down as well. 38-yard punt by Russ Salerno, his third attempt of the night. A return of about 3. Raymond Gross will get the ball with 1:51 remaining.
Clipping, Georgia Southern on the run back, 15 yards.
Well, the Eagles have had big plays so far here in the first half. Darrell Hopkins with a pair of them, bolting 27 yards on the last play of the first quarter to make the score 14-7. And then Hopkins again, 47 yards. First time they touched it in the second period to take the lead 21-7. Penalties were a problem 2 weeks ago in the Eagles' last game at Marshall. They had 10. So far, 6 penalties for 70 yards. That could take them out of field goal range right here. They'll have some work to do to get across midfield. Joe Ross has room and a blocker. Ross up to the 42-yard line. Ray Irvin makes the stick for Central Florida. Out of very little, Delano, Georgia Southern getting downfield blocking and continuing on that second effort.
Yes, great blocking by the offensive line there, but what's more important, Joe Ross really looks good running the ball. He's really cutting well.
Carl Miller hauls it in and out of bounds at midfield, just shy of the first down. Beautiful hands. That's textbook technique by Carl Miller, catching it with his hands away from his body. And Raymond Gross drilled a bullet.
And we talked about Carl Miller earlier. He's doing it all. He's blocking. He's running the football. And you see the great soft hands that he has. Synonymous of a wide receiver, but he's an offensive back who has to get down dirty a lot of times. But he can do it all. Great player.
With 1:36 remaining in the first half, you think about field goal range for David Kuhl, the long placement kicker for Georgia Southern. He's nailed a pair of 44-yarders this year. Had an attempt from 57 yards, had the distance, but it was wide. Here's second down and short. Second effort, and he stopped short.
Good penetration that time by the Central Florida defensive line, led by linebacker Eric Jones, and he just rammed it right up in the middle. And you see Raymond Gross handing off to Joe Ross. There you see Eric Jones, a nice tackle there, and the help from Willie Britton.
Eric Jones, a converted running back for Central Florida, making the initial contact, and that'll spend Georgia Southern's 3 timeouts here in the first half. 1:23 remaining in a physical football game so far. Rain has had a little bit of effect, and that ball's been slippery. Raymond Gross had a problem with the exchange. 2 turnovers, 2 interceptions. The Georgia Southern defensive backs, Jim Mutimer and Rodney Oglesby, picking off Travis Peoples, has blunted a pair of drives. Otherwise, Central Florida's right in business here as we approach halftime.
And you saw Tim Stowers talking to Raymond Gross on the sideline, probably telling him not to make a mistake and throw the ball shallow over into the flats because it could be picked off and returned for a touchdown. Go upfield is what he was telling Raymond Gross.
Terrence Sorrell in the slot at the bottom of the screen. And Darrell Belser split wide at the bottom. Raymond, first down, and he'll go down and keep the clock moving. Ray Irvin there to bring him down. He gets credited with the tackle. Clock at 1:18, it stopped to move the sticks for the first down for Georgia Southern.
Georgia Southern needs to be on the line and ready to go when they blow the whistle.
Carl Miller in a slot to the bottom of the screen. Raymond, incomplete. Raymond looking for Alonzo McGee, the senior backup, slot back. That'll bring up second down. It kills the clock with 1:11 remaining in the first half.
What Georgia Southern has to realize here is they have plenty of time. Do not panic. They need to get the ball, and if a receiver catches it, he needs to be looking for the white lines out of bounds. And you see Raymond Gross, he hits Alonzo McGee right in his chest, and boy, he'll have nightmares about that tonight.
Carl Miller rather, in motion. Raymond getting pressure. He'll go down. Bill Stewart, the senior inside linebacker, comes up with the sack. First time that he has been dropped for a loss tonight. Raymond Gross, a loss of 9.
Raymond Gross back, and there you see Bill Stewart coming through untouched, and Raymond had nowhere to go, but he holds on to the ball. Something that when he first started at Georgia Southern his freshman year, he had problems doing. He would drop back, maybe a blitzing linebacker, he would make a bad mistake, maybe dropping the ball, maybe forcing a bad pass, and you can see the maturity of Raymond Gross.
Well, coming up at halftime, we'll take a look at the Dixie Crystals Sugar scoreboard and other college games affected around the nation, the big games in Division 1A and the top-rated teams in Division 1AA. We'll also take a look at former Georgia Southern Eagle coach Irk Russell, the making of the video of Irk Russell. We showed this two weeks ago, got lots of response, people still wanting more information. We'll have an 800 number in which you can call and order that video. We also have some games still coming up here on the Georgia Southern Sports Network in our affiliates. The James Madison Dukes come calling to Statesboro November 3rd. That's for homecoming. And then the next week, the Eagles will travel up to UTC to take on the Moccasins of Buddy Nix.
And do you have your videotape yet? I certainly have mine.
Raymond Gross talking it over with Terrence Sorrell. Plenty of time on the huddle clock. 13, 11, 10 seconds on the huddle clock. That much time left in the game. Gross has time to throw. Ball batted. Almost picked up by Terrence Sorrell. Rick Hamilton, a linebacker, drifting back into coverage, got a hand on it.
Well, Raymond Gross went that time to Darrell Belser, and Darrell Belser at fault that time. You have to say it because he is the wide receiver. He must come back to the ball. That time he drifted and he allowed the defensive backs and defensive linebackers to get in the way of the ball, and that could have been very, very costly for Georgia Southern. They could have picked that ball off there.
Terry Harvin at the 30. A roughing the punt call earlier was big for Georgia Southern. Plenty of protection. Mike Dickinson back inside his 20. And brought down immediately. Dropped by Ron Johnson. A kick of 40 yards by Harvin. That's his average.
And there you see Raymond Gross on the pass. Darrell Belser, you can see the top of his helmet. You see him drifting back. He has got to come up and go to that ball. And number 42, Rick Hamilton, almost picked that thing off and went the other way. It would have been a big play for Central Florida in getting them back in this ball game before halftime.
Well, 43 seconds remaining. Here are the last 2 minutes of this halftime, taking a while.
Yes, it is.
Travis Peoples, the freshman, will hustle his offense out there. 10 seconds left on the huddle clock. 7. Look out for a flag. There's 5 and 4. 2 seconds left on the huddle clock. They get it off with just a second remaining. Peoples, incomplete, looking for Mike Dickinson at the 21-yard line. 39 seconds remaining in the first half.
And we talked about Georgia Southern having to be very careful. Central Florida has to be extremely careful here that they do not make a big error and give Georgia Southern a big turnover and allow them to get back on the board before halftime.
Knights trying to cut into this 14-point deficit with the last 30 seconds of the first half. Peoples tucks it in. Nick Davis giving pursuit. He'll bring him down. That's Davis, the freshman from Griffin, Georgia, showing lots of speed. Peoples picks up 9 with the clock still on the move. Now at 23 seconds remaining. They're going to take a spot on this and pull the chains over, measure for a first down. Georgia Southern 21. Travis Peoples in the Central Florida Knights 7.
We talked about the quarterback situation. Travis Peoples has gone the entire way this first half, but you have to wonder, coming back in the second half, will Coach McDowell go with someone else? But really, Peoples has not played that poorly. Central Florida has just made some mistakes.
Central Florida in its first year in Division 1AA, on track, seemingly on track for a playoff spot. They feel like they need this win tonight. Now they're a little bit short of the first down, and they might be right. Since 1978, when the 1AA playoffs began, 9 teams have qualified with 4 or 5 losses, but out of that 9, only 2 receiving at-large bids. The other were conference champs. Back in 1987, Marshall and University of North Texas got in with 4 losses. Marshall was runner-up that year back in 1987. 23 seconds remaining in the first half. to his tight end, Osborne. Clock still on the move. Check that, G.T. Paris. All in the family with the Paris family here at Central Florida. His dad, Gary, a former Cleveland Brown tight end, does the color commentary for the local cable TV telecast of Central Florida football. This is Dickinson scampering to get out of bounds. Jim Mutimer and Nick Davis diving. 8 seconds remaining, and Dickinson gets out of bounds. Heads up play and nice hustle.
I tell you what, it's certainly showing that Coach McDowell is not afraid to go right at Georgia Southern. Even under these conditions, it appears that there's no chance for him to get any points, but he's going right at it. There's always a chance.
8 seconds remaining in the half. 5 receivers split. Curtis Gordon and Peoples will get out of bounds with just 1 second remaining. How about that? Your big defensive lineman, Curtis Gordon, sizing up at 6'3", 256, the junior from Ellenwood, Georgia, hustling after that Fleet quarterback.
1 second left on the clock. You know what it's time for, the old Hail Mary. They'll try to throw it down and see if they can get a lucky catch or a Georgia Southern penalty.
Sean Beckton and Mike Dickinson at the bottom of the screen. 3 wide receivers. Beckton. That's Cooper at the bottom. They're looking for Sean Beckton, and a heave-ho into the end zone, 5 yards too long, and that'll spend the first half here at the Citrus Bowl. Well, you hear the reaction. The homestanding Central Florida Knights started hot, put a touchdown on the board right away, but Georgia Southern has stormed back with 3 touchdowns. Darrell Hopkins with 2 big touchdown runs, and Georgia Southern leads at halftime 21-7. Stick with us for halftime for the Citrus Bowl. Franco Grillo of the University of Central Florida buried the opening kickoff of the second half in the end zone. He has a stiff breeze behind him. So Georgia Southern takes over, first down and 10 at the 20. The first play of the second half. Here's Raymond Gross with Joe Ross. Raymond Gross brought down in the backfield for a loss of 2.
Willie Britton came through untouched from the backside that time as he slipped through and drug Raymond Gross down from behind. Raymond Gross back in the huddle saying, hey, what's going on, guys? Somebody pick him up backside.
Well, here is some efficiency. Half the times they touched the ball in the first half, they cashed it in. Terry Harbin with only 3 punts, and look at those 3 touchdowns right in the heart of the second half as Georgia Southern gained control of this contest. Looked like Miguel Ayub.
Foul. False start. Georgia Southern, 5 yards, still second down.
Looked like that freshman from Jacksonville Forest High School, Miguel Ayub, moving early, drawing the flag. Well, a couple of statistics stand out here. One was time of possession. Central Florida had nearly 20 minutes. Georgia Southern only 10. But the Eagles have racked up 198 yards on the ground. The reverse, Carl Miller trying to get around Spitulski. Does not. Bob Spitulski stays home on the reverse to Carl Miller and brings him down for a loss of 4.
And that's good to see that, because Bob Spitulski, a tremendous player, and anytime you have that little reverse, there is the danger of the defensive end not staying home. That time he does, and he chases Carl down, so he shows a lot of speed because Miller is a speed merchant.
Jimmy Roberts, the senior cornerback, also out there with Spitulski holding Carl Miller down. Third down and 16. Miller, incomplete. That'll bring on Terry Harbin for his 4th punt of the night.
Bill Stewart came in untouched on the blitz that time and really forced Raymond Gross to throw a bad pass.
Central Florida football fans getting their first opportunity since the first drive of the game to air out their lungs a little bit. Again, we're just underway in the second half. Harvin from his 1. End over end, Mike Dickinson will take it at the 46-yard line. We're just underway in the second half. Georgia Southern on top by a pair of touchdowns. Let's take this time out. Up the Central Florida drive on second down. Travis Peoples intercepted by Nick Davis. the middle linebacker. That's his second interception of the year. There's a flag down. Davis goes down at the 40. We'll see what the flag is all about. Make that an 8-yard return off the interception. Travis Peoples picked off for the 3rd time tonight.
Legal block. Georgia Southern on the return. 15 yards to be a first down.
And you see Travis Peoples setting up, and he throws this ball. He must have not seen Nick Davis, because it was almost as if he was throwing the pass right to him. He obviously lost him in the crowd for the interception. And Travis Peoples having troubles right now, and we may see a new quarterback coming in next time. We talked about Coach McDowell saying he will not stay with the starter if he is not producing. At that time, ill-advised pass by Travis Peoples.
And we do see Rudy Jones down on the sideline heating up right now. Raymond Gross sprinting out. He's going to hang on to it. He has a blocker. Wiggling his way up across the 30, up to the 33-yard line for a gain of 7 on first down. Georgia Southern has gotten production tonight from their name players, their outstanding players, and from freshman Nick Davis, a backup middle linebacker from Griffin, from Jim Mutimer, the safety from Dunwoody, who picks up his first interception of the night. Of course, Rodney Oglesby, the cornerback, is an All-American candidate, picking up his 3rd interception of the season tonight. The pitch. Darrell Hopkins out of bounds, picks up the first down for Georgia Southern. Rick Hamilton out there, the linebacker, to make the hit.
This is when Georgia Southern becomes so tough. They always seem to take advantage of other teams' miscues. And watch Raymond Gross as he rides Joe Ross. Joe Ross is picked up, and that leaves Gross wide open to make the pitch to Darrell Hopkins for the big yardage and the first down.
Well, 2 of the Knights bit big on that fake, and primarily it was linebacker Vic Taylor, number 49. Simple dive play, maybe 2. Again, Hamilton and Eric Jones, a linebacker, in on the play.
Again, the same play that you saw on that second down play in which Georgia Southern picked up the first down. That time, they give to the dive back because they see a little daylight through there. And Joe Ross says, hey, I'm going to take 2 or 3 yards if you're going to give it to me, because those yardage adds up to a first down.
Look at that average, 21 yards, nearly 22 yards each time he's touched the ball. Carl Miller on the Utah pitch, trying to get outside across the 50, a flag down, and chased out of bounds by Shane Law, the freshman free safety. Jimmy Roberts also there, or check that, Ray Irvin also there. Looks like it could be a clip.
On Darrell Belser, the receiver on the left side.
Gain of 19 will be negated.
There's holding on Georgia Southern.
And Georgia Southern hates to see a perfect play like this go by the wayside. The nice Utah pass, and here you'll see Darrell Belser coming up in your screen. He is just leaving his man, number 3, Jimmy Roberts. A lot of times receivers say, hey, I wasn't holding him, give me a break. That is a tough block on the corner.
Carl Miller has been a weapon for that offense, an unsung weapon as a kick returner, as the primary receiver for the team, and as a slot back, as the running back. He's averaging 115 yards all-purpose yardage so far this year. 9 penalties for 100 yards. Miller again breaks a tackle, the 40, and out of bounds at the 35-yard line, chased out of bounds by Eric Buckley. And we're going to see a flag. Was that? Let's take a look, see the flag down, and try to decide what this is, Delano.
And look at Raymond Gross, the pitch, but look at the block by Darrell Hopkins, the leg whip on Ray Irvin to spring Carl Miller. And Carl Miller, it'll probably be a personal foul, a late hit coming right there.
Eric Buckley, the junior strong safety. That's really going to hurt Georgia Southern, eating up the clock here early in the second half and driving it down the field.
And there you see Irvin, you know he's hating it, saying, hey, let this little jitterbug get a hold of my legs and roll me up on the corner. I have got to stay on my feet and make the tackle. And this is the penalty, the late hit, really kind of questionable. He's on the sideline. He's trying to stop this guy from running down the sideline for a touchdown. I don't know about that.
It was a little bit of a late hit, but I don't know if that's a hit that Buckley would be proud of. If he's going to get a hit for out of bounds or a late hit, he's going to get a lick in, and that certainly was not the case right there. We have 11 minutes remaining in the third period. Miller in motion. Ball is loose, and Joe Ross jumps on it immediately.
And of course, Raymond Gross had that problem earlier in the first half of fumbling the ball from snap, and you have to wonder, did they talk about it at halftime, what was going on? It looks like maybe Raymond Gross is pulling out just a little bit too quickly, maybe a little too eager to get on the play. He has got to stay underneath and make sure that ball gets in his hands. That could have been disastrous for Georgia Southern, could have been very advantageous for Central Florida.
2nd down and 14. Joe Ross. Not much. Rick Hamilton, the inside linebacker, meets him at the line of scrimmage. Then Ross, with second effort, maybe a gain of 3. That'll bring up 3rd down and 9.
And you want to be a linebacker, let me tell you, watch what happens on this play. Look at Joe Ross running, and well, we couldn't see what happened. But I tell you what, Rusty Parrish, I'll tell you what happened, made a good block for the offensive line, and Georgia Southern, the inexperienced offensive line, coming through tonight for the Eagles.
Britton and Lindsay along the defensive front getting a test. The inside handoff, Hopkins. 1st down, Georgia Southern. Whoop, let's wait, let's see where the spot is. Big lick dished out by the Central Florida defense. Hopkins down around the 10. Let's see where they spot the ball. That's a nice inside handoff. Miller out blocking in front. And on 4th and 1, Bill Stewart makes a big hit for the Knights. We have a timeout on the field. 9:39 remaining in the 3rd period. 4th down and short. Let's take a timeout on the Georgia Southern Sports Network.
Suppose.
And really a tremendous job by Jay Russell, who calls the offensive plays for Georgia Southern. They ran a Utah pass a few minutes ago. It got big yardage, but a penalty. They come back and do it again and successful.
On 4th down and 1, while we're taking a look at that replay, didn't exactly get the play off. Georgia Southern's offensive line whistled for this.
Dead ball. False start. Georgia Southern, 4th down, 5 yards.
Good job.
That'll bring on Mike Dowse, who's 5 of 7 on field goals so far this year. He's the Eagles man from inside the 40. Terry Harvin will hold. Hal Radford is the snapper.
Mike Dow is cool as a cucumber, of course, hitting the big field goal in last year's game against Stephen F. Austin to win the national championship.
A 33-yard attempt. It's good. Georgia Southern moves out 24-7, putting their first points of the board on the board here in the 2nd half. 9.5 minutes remaining in the 3rd period. Georgia Southern 24, Central Florida 7. Well, we've seen some good-looking legs before, and that's not one of them. Larry Salazar wrapped with ice on crutches on the Central Florida sideline, the senior linebacker. We talked about it earlier, a hyperextended knee. Don Norton's boot with 9.5 minutes remaining in the 3rd. Pat Stewart at his 2. Chuck McClurg makes initial contact, and he goes down in a stack at the 20. Return of 18 yards for Pat Stewart.
Boy, those special team coaches love to see the crazy kick cover team, the KKK as they are known, stop the opposing team on a kickoff inside the 20-yard line. That's kudos for Georgia Southern.
The Eagles move 9 plays, 57 yards, and again they do it in a hurry. Just 3 minutes and 11 seconds for the Mike Dowse 33-yard field goal. 24-7, Eagles in command early in the 2nd half. And now we see the change at quarterback. Rudy Jones, a junior from Miami, gives to Giacone, and he's met hard at the line of scrimmage. You can hear the pads thump. Mark Giles gets off the stack. So does Ronald Johnson. Let's take a look at how Central Florida managed after they took that first time they handled the ball 80 yards down, stuck it in for a touchdown, then interception, punt, another second interception, 3 turnovers in the first half. They only punted the ball twice. Russ Salerno not getting much work, but A workout by the Georgia Southern pass defense. 3 interceptions in the game so far, 2 of them in the first half. Here's Jones again. Giacone, maybe for 2, diving over the pile. We see Mike West there at the bottom. Rudy Jones is a 5'9" 190-pound junior from Miami. He's been intercepted 5 times so far this year. That's been a problem with him, but he's an outstanding runner. He's picked up a total of 322 yards on 26 carries.
And now that Peoples is out and Jones is in, Jones is still not immune from the cutting block he could go to if he is not effective.
That's right. Ron Johnson, the holder on placement, standing out by in the sideline, another junior quarterback. Jones looking for Becton. He'll go down. Pulls it down in a hurry. Tim Brown credited with the tackle. He's controlling the middle of the line, starting to assume control of the middle of the line for Georgia Southern.
Meanwhile, Giff Smith and Steve Busaletti are doing a good job on the outside. And really, you're getting to a point now for Central Florida where they're going to have to leave the ground and go to the air.
An official's timeout. They'll check for a first down here. Rudy Jones came into the lineup 2 weeks ago for Central Florida. This is not new. Let's check that spot. That much. This is not new. In fact, Rudy Jones has relieved Travis Peoples or some variety thereof in every game so far this year.
Exactly, and to hear Coach McDowell speak about it, it's really no big deal. The quarterback is an interchangeable part, just like any other position on the Central Florida team. But a lot of coaches will tell you you can't have that at the quarterback position.
Well, let's see how daring they are right now. Not very. Coach Gene McDowell and his offensive coordinator Mike Krusek brings on the punt team on 4th, and you saw how many inches. Russ Salerno for his 3rd punt of the night. Has a strong wind at his back. Rodney Oglesby at his own 40. Fake. That's Montrell Green at the 40. Montrell Green at the 40 again, ridden out of bounds by Rodney Oglesby. Beautiful call by Central Florida. Montrell Green on the fake punt picks up 29 yards, and Central Florida lights a fire. They're in business in Georgia Southern territory.
And you know who makes this play work? Watch the punter, Russ Salerno. Look at the fake he gives, and that leaves it wide open for the first down pickup, and Rodney Oglesby doing a good job as far as being the only man back and making the tackle.
Head coach Gene McDowell spent 16 years as an assistant at Florida State under Bobby Bowden, the master with a bag of tricks. Gene applying some of that knowledge well on that play. Mark Giacone slamming into the right side of the line for 3.
Funny how the fans can go from boos to cheers. Of course, they were booing when they thought they were going to punt the ball. They pull off a successful fake punt, and everybody loves Coach McDowell. He's great.
We've mentioned the offensive coordinator, Mike Krusek, for Central Florida. Might remember that name. He used to carry a clipboard for the Pittsburgh Steelers, a member of 2 of those Super Bowl championship teams. 37-year-old Mike Krusek. Jones going to hang on to it. Belasis knocked down by Kevin Whitley. Not before he picks up a first down up to the 24-yard line. Rudy Jones coming in and having immediate impact. Of course, you got to give credit to that 4th down conversion on the punt. And Central Florida 2 for 2 on 4th down conversions tonight.
And it's important that Georgia Southern's middlemen contain the quarterback, because the outside men, Steve Busaletti and Giff Smith, are just laying their ears back and coming to the outside, forcing Randy Jones to go through the middle.
Belasis. Again, the fullback, Perry Belasis from West Palm Beach. 5'9", 180 pounds. He's a transfer from Akron, Ohio. He's missed 3 games so far this year. Or check it. He has not missed 3 games. Perry Belasis with 1 touchdown run so far this year. 6:20 remaining in the 3rd period. Central Florida on the move. 2nd down at the 20. Jones has Becton. And Kevin Whitley has Becton and ushers him out of bounds up to the 14-yard line. Does he have enough for the first down?
And you see Jones step right back in the pocket and fire out to Becton. That's a little hitch pattern. He's saying, I'm going to go one-on-one with Kevin Whitley and see if he can stop me from picking up the first down. If Whitley stops him, then Whitley did a great job. If Becton gets the first down, then Becton looks like the hero in this play.
Here's the measurement. First down at the 15-yard line, inside the 15, make it the 14 for Central Florida. Rudy Jones, 2 weeks ago up in Birmingham, Alabama, came off the bench, threw a pair of touchdown passes. Central Florida scored 3 times in the fourth quarter to pull away from Samford.
That's the mark of a good receiver, Mark Becton, knowing exactly where to go to pick up the first down.
Mark Giacone in the eye. Has room. Still on his feet, lunging forward up to the 6. Give Mark Giacone credit. He's tough to bring down. Mark Giles makes the initial hit up at the 9. The Giacone just fighting forward.
What a great running display we were seeing here tonight. Some very talented athletes. Watch Mark Giacone as he breaks through the line, and then he does the rest on his own. He stiff arms Mark Giles. Then he takes on Kevin Whitley and says, I'm going to pick up another yard. He's stretching for everything he can get. Some super athletes at running back here tonight.
2nd down and 1, but they're knocking on the door. Out of the steamroller, Giacone brought down in the backfield. Bron Johnson busting through and getting penetration.
What a play there by Eugene Hayes.
Check that, Eugene Hayes. Thank you very much.
You see him come through the line from the backside, and he gets the hand wrapped around Giacone's leg that time. Giacone cannot fight off the tackle on this occasion.
That brings up 3rd down and about 4.
Crucial play in the ball game.
Jones still has it. Kevin Whitley. It's a foot race. Touchdown, Central Florida.
What a call by the offensive staff of Central Florida. They've been running straight at Georgia Southern, straight at Georgia Southern, straight at Georgia Southern, and then at the last moment when it really counted, Rudy Jones takes it, bootlegs it, easy touchdown.
5:15 remaining in the 3rd period. Franco Grilla. And Central Florida is right back in this ball game. The Knights bounce back with a drive down the field. They do it with a fake punt. 5:15 remaining. That's the score. Franco Grilla set to boot this one off for Central Florida. All of a sudden, the Knights, being close to being put away in this game, are right back in it. Carl Miller stands at his own goal line. He'll bring it out. Has an alley. Still on his feet. At the 30, he's got a block. Dickinson, the masked man, is picked off. There's a flag. They're going to call it a clip. Carl Miller is gone with a flag down. Carl Miller goes 102 yards, but there are 2 flags down deep in Georgia Southern territory. We're going to have to take another look at this one, Delano.
Well, it makes you wonder why Central Florida even kicked to Carl Miller. We've seen him on the 2 previous times. The first time when they kicked off after they scored the first touchdown of the game, it was a strip kick to keep it away from Carl Miller. They know his explosiveness. The second time they kicked it way out of the end zone. This time it goes to Carl Miller, and it just shows you that once you have an athlete like Carl Miller, sooner or later, if you get that ball to him, he is going to make a big play happen, like Deion Sanders, just like Rocket Ismail Rahib made happen today against Notre Dame. If you watch that ball game, those people you do not want to kick the ball to. Fortunately, Georgia Southern called for clipping.
Clipping, Georgia Southern, first down.
You can hear the Central Florida fans. They're cheering because this doesn't count.
And there you see Carl Miller. He breaks through, a good job of running, weaving through, and this may be the clip right there, but it was very questionable. But a referee has got to make that call if he sees fit to.
Raymond Gross from deep in his own territory at the 7. He'll keep it himself. Has blocking. Knocked down in the backfield. Fighting off a block and making his initial contact is Bill Stewart. But Bob Spitalski getting out there to bring him down. Let's go back to the touchdown. Rudy Jones sells the fake, and Georgia Southern buys it.
That is what you call a suck job. Mark Giacconi did a tremendous job of going over the top and making everybody think he's over. And there you see Rudy saying, 99, 99, 99, 99. I got you.
Gross. Almost picked off. Shane Law cutting in front of Alonzo McGee. It looked like Shane Law had that one in his sights. Also there, Rick Hamilton, the linebacker. That pass was well covered.
Bill Stewart also in on the play, forcing Raymond Gross to make the bad pass. And what you're seeing now is a fired-up Central Florida Knights team. And this is not what Georgia Southern wants.
This drive is what got the crowd stoked up. The key play, 29-yard fake punt. Montrell Green getting into Georgia Southern territory. Then Rudy Jones capping it off with the 8-yard touchdown drive. Third down. Confusion in the backfield. And Central Florida comes to life. Raymond Gross with confusion off the snap. Busted play. Joe Ross runs right into him, a pair of seniors.
And the Central Florida Knights defense right there on the spot.
Harvin gets plenty of time, booting into a stiff breeze. Dickinson on the run at the 35. Has a hole. Knocked down at the 20-yard line. Mike Dickinson with a return of about 15 yards. Make that check that, a return of 27 yards. Dickinson fielded that low liner on the run.
And there you see Mike Dickinson fielding the punt, and he was fielding it on the run. He had great momentum, and he was off to the races. Kevin Whitley coming up with a big tackle for Georgia Southern.
There was a stiff breeze in the face of Terry Harvin, the senior from Keystone Heights, Florida, for Georgia Southern. Eagles will have that breeze in about 3 minutes and 39 seconds. That's how much remaining in the third. Mark Giaccone. Shane Maxwell, the linebacker from Winder, Georgia, there to make the initial stick.
Now that Central Florida has displayed talents to do just about the unexplainable or whatever you don't think they're going to do, Georgia Southern has to guard against everything. Now they don't have to worry about them going straight up the middle. They can worry about them going around the ends as well.
Looks like Sean Harrelson down on the field. This has been a physical game. Sean Harrelson, the 6'3" sophomore, a backup defensive tackle. We have 3 minutes and 27 seconds remaining in the third period. Georgia Southern defense going to have to come through. Central Florida down by 10. They have the ball in excellent field position, and this crowd is right back in this ball game.
And watch Sean Harrelson here as he gets bent back in the crowd. Look at him take that. Oh my goodness, he's underneath that pile, and we know those piles can be very, very dangerous for football players. Luckily, he is up and running off the field. That is great to see.
Sean Harrelson, a sophomore. He's from Maryland. Came to Georgia Southern by way of Fort Union Military Academy in Virginia. Curtis Gordon bounces off the bench, and he's into the lineup. Big number 60 in the heart of the defensive line. Mark Giaccone running it strong between the 20s. 123 yards so far here late in the third period. Rudy Jones on blitz checkoff. Looking for Becton. Almost picked off. Kevin Whitley had him covered, as did safety Mark Giles.
That was a great adjustment by Georgia Southern that time. Rudy Jones picked up the blitz. He called it off to his receivers, and then Georgia Southern drops back into their regular defense, and that kind of threw Rudy Jones. Fortunately for Rudy, he did not throw an interception.
Delano, that is an intentional call. They fake the blitz, get an adjustment, and then drop into coverage. They were very successful at that in the last game against the Marshall Thundering Herd. Rudy Jones missing his first connection after 2 connections when he came into the ball game on that last touchdown drive. 3:05 remaining. and Rudy Jones will have a timeout facing 3rd down and long. Want to make sure they get the right call here. Third down and 9 with 3 minutes and 5 seconds remaining in the 3rd period. We're going to keep it here and think along with them because they want to make sure this one counts. They have some momentum. Jones talking over with Gene McDowell and with Mike Prusek, the offensive coordinator. They have some momentum and they have the ball deep down in there. You don't want to settle for the field goal. Let's look ahead for Georgia Southern and the rest of the way. The team coming up October 27th, Savannah State comes into Paulson Stadium in Statesboro, followed by James Madison and then Samford. For tickets and ticket information, dial 1-800-544-2798.
Georgia Southern can certainly not be thinking about those games right now. They have a real competitor here in the University of Central Florida, as always.
Let's keep this in mind. 3 minutes and 5 seconds remaining in the 3rd period. Central Florida has dominated opponents in the 4th. They've only given up 2 touchdowns and a field goal all year in 6 games. In fact, they've outscored their opponents 72-17 in the final period. Good example of that last game against Samford. We talked about Rudy Jones coming into the ball game. They put 3 touchdowns on the board in the 4th quarter and pulled away for the 37-16 win. 3rd down and 9. Pressure from the backside. Nice call, Belasis. Curtis Gordon there. Well shy of the 1st down. Nice call. They caught the Eagles in a blitz from the backside. Curtis Gordon there, the defensive lineman, and Jim Mutimer, the safety there, to usher him out of bounds.
And perfect timing by Rudy Jones, feeling the pressure of the blitz. He gets it away, but it is not enough for the 1st down. Of course, now Central Florida will go with the field goal.
Let's keep an eye on the fake. Last year, just before halftime, Central Florida tried a fake field goal, failed. Ron Johnson, the holder, is the 3rd-string quarterback. Franco Grilla from 33 yards. And it is good. With 2:54 remaining in the 3rd period. We said it before, Central Florida has a ball game once more. Georgia Southern leads 24-17, but after trailing 24-7, the Knights come back with a Rudy Jones touchdown on the bootleg 8 yards, and now a Franco Grilla field goal, and now they trail only by a field goal. Upcoming games, television games this year on the Georgia Southern Sports Network. James Madison at homecoming in Statesboro. Then we head on the road November 10th to Chattanooga to take on the UTC Moccasins.
Georgia Southern and James Madison and Georgia Southern and UT Chattanooga always play tough as well, but Central Florida, something about these guys, they really get up for Georgia Southern football. And really, when you look at Central Florida's team now in Division I AA, they have the athletes to compete with Georgia Southern.
Well, the 2nd half got off to a slow start. The pace of this game slowed down considerably, but here at the end of the 3rd quarter, we have a ball game. Each week at 6 o'clock on Sports South, you can catch Coach Tim Stowers' show, Georgia Southern Football 90. That's Wednesdays at 6 on Sports South Network. Carl Miller stands deep at the goal line. Herman Gray, they're aiming for him, and that ball goes out of bounds. They booted it at Gray, but a bit too swiftly, and it got by him. We'll try it one more time. Herman Gray, a backup slot back out of Fairfax, South Carolina.
And no, that was not a bad kick. That was intentional. They saw what Carl Miller could do on the last time he touched the ball. Of course, the penalty brought back a touchdown kickoff return. And this time they say, hey, we're not going to kick it to you. Even if it does go out of bounds, they'll probably do it again here.
That scoring drive, 4 plays, knocked it in there from short yardage out. That punt return by Mike Dickinson had him sitting pretty in the Franco Grilla field goal from 33 yards. To give credit to the Georgia Southern defense, they made a stop. Knights get a touchdown or continue that drive, and they're in trouble. We have 2:54 remaining in the 3rd period. That's Derek McGrady, backup quarterback from Statesboro. He's on the near side. And you have Herman Gray on the far side, flanking Carl Miller. Let's check a baseball score from Oakland in the 3rd inning. The Oakland Athletics out in front of the Cincinnati Reds 1-0. Eric Davis has been removed from that game. The Cincinnati outfielder is injured. try to bring you up to date, keep you up to date on World Series game number 4. Davis hurt his shoulder diving for a ball. Remember back to game 2, he was diving for a line drive and injured that hand. Or check that was game 1 and injured his hand. Eric Davis going all out for the Reds to seal this thing up in a sweep in 4 games.
And you will not see this ball go back to Carl Miller, I guarantee you.
Line drive taken at the 14. On his feet at the 30. And ridden down at the 32-yard line. What did you just say?
Okay, I was wrong, but they didn't plan it that way. But it was a good squib kick to give the defense, the kickoff team, time to get down on the field.
Carl Miller with a return of 18 yards, and that'll bring on Raymond Gross and the Eagle offense, and they need to get something going here to stem the tide of momentum that Central Florida has established, scoring the last 10 points of this game.
Getting ready to get very loud in here. Central Florida Knight fans on their feet.
Joe Ross is the fullback. Raymond tries to cut upfield. Staring in the eyes of Bill Stewart. You know, all week long with Bill Stewart there on the outside linebacking spot, Central Florida scout team keeps running the option pitch. Stewart staring right in the eyes of Raymond. He plays it pretty well.
Yes, it is, and it is really tough to play this option, and Stewart, much to his credit, is right there, but Raymond Gross can one of these times break away from Stewart, and he could be off to the races.
Joe Ross keeping those legs churning. Gain of 4. That'll make it 3rd down and 1. Bob Spitalski, the linebacker, makes the stop. They're going to give it to him. 1st down for Georgia Southern. Give Joe Ross credit for keeping those knees, keeping those legs churning.
And that's what is so frustrating about the option. There are so many ways in which Georgia Southern or any option team can come at you.
On 16 carries, Joe Ross has 67 yards. 17 carries tonight. Well, Tim Stowers has to be pleased with coming back and getting a 1st down right away. Clock on the run. Minute 50 remaining in the 3rd period. Eagles on top, 24-17.
And on that play, Bob Spitalski, after Raymond Gross had handed the ball off to Joe Ross, Bob Spitalski popped Raymond Gross in the back and said, "I'm back here, buddy."
Second down. Gross slips down, and he will go down. Eric Buckley there to tap him on the shoulder, but Raymond slipped. He had protection from his center, Rusty Parrish, but he goes down. Big loss. That'll bring up 3rd down and long.
You take a look at it, perhaps a good thing Raymond Gross did slip, because all sorts of Central Florida Knight players were coming in, led by Eric Jones and Eric Buckley, the Eric Boys.
3rd down and 16. Raymond, inside handoff to Hopkins. A couple yards, but not nearly enough. Again, those linebackers, boy, are they active. Bill Stewart from Seffner, Florida, the senior 200-pounder, makes the stop. And Central Florida will get the ball right back. 30 seconds remaining in the 3rd period. Mike Dickinson retreating to about his 20. Again, Terry Harvin punting with the wind, a stiff breeze in his face. This is high, beautiful spiral. Dickinson waves it off. He'll fair catch with Hal Radford, the snapper. 1st one down, and right there an excellent coverage. A boot of 36 yards, but a beautiful spiral and lots of hang time from Terry Harvin. 14 seconds remaining in the 3rd period. Dickinson wanted his hands on that one, but that was hung up in a beautiful punt.
And really, we haven't talked enough about the linebackers for Central Florida coming into this game. Coach Stowers talked to me the other day, and he was really, really nervous about controlling those linebackers for Central Florida, and they are playing very well right now.
Seeing Tim Stowers and Mike Hodges going to work with the offensive line on the sideline. Belasis, all that play smelled out beautifully. Ron Johnson, check that, Paul Sickley, the linebacker from Dalton, makes the stop. Clock on the run. Here we see the end of the 3rd period. Now we have a ball game headed into the final quarter of this game. Georgia Southern on top by a touchdown. Junior quarterback Rudy Jones bounces off the bench, relieves starter Travis Peoples, and the junior from Miami electrifies this offense. After trailing early in the second half, 24-7, Jones dashes 8 yards on a bootleg for a touchdown. The Knights also get a field goal. Rudy Jones accounting for 10 points, generating some offense, and Central Florida is right back in this game, trailing 24-7. And here's Jones to open up the fourth period. Jones telegraphs his pass, and he'll go down, and a flag is down. Looks like holding in the area where holding is normally called. Looked like that time Derek Connor, the left tackle, big junior, had a hold of Alex Mash or Steve Busceletti.
There's holding, Central Florida.
Well, at first it looked as if Rudy Jones was going to have a lot of time back in the pocket, and then all of a sudden the Georgia Southern defensive linemen all gathered around him.
Well, let's take another look, as we did at the beginning of this game, at big tackle Alex Goforth in his matchup against either of those defensive ends, Giff Smith, number 95, and Steve Busceletti, or Alex Mash. Mash, a freshman from Thomasville. Boy, is he quick. Now, penalties have been a problem for the Eagles tonight. A season high 11 with 112 yards. That has really hurt. Mark Giacone in the eye. Jones with plenty of time and room. Oh, through the arms of Sean Beckton. Nearly picked off. Rodney Oglesby on his knees on the sideline. He knew he had a shot at his second interception of the night.
And Rodney Oglesby, when you compare Rodney Oglesby to Kevin Whitley, we find that Rodney Oglesby is the best cover man. And you saw him that time. He was waiting, and then he released at the right time. The ball just went through his hands. He could not make the catch for the interception.
Now Russ Salerno punting against a stiff breeze. Oglesby, fair catch at the 49-yard line. Well, Georgia Southern with 14:24 remaining. Eagles have the wind in their favor now, and the Eagles on top by a touchdown. Miller on second down, snowed under Eric Buckley, the strong safety. A stocky 200-pound junior strong safety out there to make the stop. Also out there, those linebackers again, Rick Hamilton, the sophomore and leading tackler of the Black Knights.
Well, another thing about Georgia Southern, when they played against Middle Tennessee, they would bring the strong safety up to make the play on the pitch man. And that time, Eric Buckley did a tremendous job, and Terrence Sorrell could not make the block that he needed to make.
Buckley makes the stop, and we saw the back of number 46, Eric Jones, his senior, coming from the backside of that play. Here is third down. Joe Ross, nope, the pitch. Carl Miller, first down and more. Out of bounds inside the 30. Holding his block up there is Darrell Belser, and that allows Miller to catch up to get that extra yardage. Shane Love there to force him out of bounds.
Now, in the last play, we talked about the cornerback coming up and making a good play. This time, he gets kicked out by Darrell Hopkins. Another great block for Carl Miller. And Georgia Southern, so many times you'll see them run the option to the short side of the field, which makes them so unpredictable.
Carl Miller coming out for a sip of water. He'll be right back in there. Joe Ross is the back in the eye. Twisting ahead, maybe a gain of 4. That offensive line now really doing its damage and moving out and creating some holes.
Right now, this is really crunch time for Central Florida. They need to make a stop here if they are to hold off Georgia Southern in this ball game. And look at Joe Ross. You can tell it's crunch time. Look at him getting over the top. He is diving for yardage. There's nothing wrong with that guy's knees. Come on, give me a break. He looks good.
Lester Eford comes in for Joe Ross. Here's the pitch. Alonzo McGee. Not much there. Bob Spitulski getting physical out on the end. Clock on the move now at 12:25 remaining in the game. Eagles on top by a touchdown, 24-17.
Right now, Central Florida playing, I make the tackle. No, I get blocked this play. This play, I make the tackle. Next play, I get blocked. But they're coming up with some big plays right now. And you see Alonzo McGee trying to get out. And 56, Bob Spitulski right there on the play. A good job of coming up by Spitulski. Lester Eford bowling ahead inside the 20 down to the 15-yard line.
First down, Georgia Southern. Raymond Gross riding his fullback and then leaving it in his belly, and Eford makes a big play tonight.
What a tremendous job by the Georgia Southern offensive line. As you see, Carl Miller and the right offensive line go to the point of attack. And Lester Eford, of course, from Warner Robins, Georgia. I've got to get it in. Let me say hi to my mother and father back in Warner Robins, Georgia, and all the people watching back in the Macon area.
You can say that. I can say lots of effort by Eford. Raymond Gross tries to stick his nose on up the line of scrimmage. Gain of maybe 3. He saw a hole, but it closes quickly. Willie Britton, the nose man, right there to close up that hole, but he had some daylight in front of him.
And look at Raymond Gross here. He comes right up. It looks like it's open, and then all of a sudden, nobody's home. No opening for Raymond Gross.
Second down and 10. That's Joe Ross at the 5. Flag is thrown inside the 5 and pushed out of bounds. Joe Ross at the 2-yard line. Looks like that's going to be holding.
Against Chuck McClurg.
Chuck McClurg, a backup
There's
wide
holding
receiver.
on Georgia Southern.
McClurg, a special teams standout. The action all at the bottom of the screen. Joe Ross makes his cut, has some daylight. Let's look for the hold.
Joe McClurg, a wide receiver on a mission. He's out here. Hey, you've got to give these wide receivers a break out there, because that is such a difficult block. Now, of course, you can tell I was a wide receiver. Huh? Give us little guys a break, man. Come on.
Chuck McClurg had the block made, then grabbed on for a fistful of jersey. This telecast is authorized under rights granted by Georgia Southern University solely for the entertainment of our viewing audience. Any reproduction, rebroadcast, or other use of the description and account of this game without the expressed written consent of the Georgia Southern Sports Network is prohibited. The announcers for this broadcast are employees of the Georgia Southern Sports Network and have been selected with the approval of Georgia Southern University.
This is the 8th play of the drive. All 7 plays, by the way, have been runs.
The pitch. Hopkins close to the first down. Bob Spitalski again very active and in on the tackle.
Spitalski seems to be everywhere, and if it wasn't for Spitalski on that play, Hopkins could have very well gone in for the touchdown.
Darrell Hopkins on 5 carries has picked up 98 yards. Tonight's attendance 16,000, well shy of the 25,000 that was expected here earlier today, but that was before the rain came. We haven't had much rain though since early in the ball game. Georgia Southern would like to think it over with 3rd down and 1. Eagles lead by a touchdown. 10 minutes remaining. Let's take this network break.
Dan Larson knows a secluded course in Florida.
Georgia Southern Eagles facing a crucial 3rd down here in the 4th quarter. Eagles were 2 for 10 on 3rd down until this drive, and they've converted twice on their 2 3rd down opportunities. This is the play they call Irk ball. Power I. Joe Ross. 1st down, Georgia Southern. Well, Delano, we've seen this often. Ernest Thompson ran it for 4 years, and now he's with the Kansas City Chiefs. Simply, it's a power I. 2 offensive linemen stick on tight end numbers, and it looks just like this.
And you give it to Joe Ross, and what a person to give it to him. Look at him getting over the top. And Raymond Gross checked off at the line that time, so perhaps they were thinking about going outside and then decided that, hey, the odds were stacked against us. Let's go up the middle.
Brian Broughton wears number 85, the tight end number at the bottom of the screen. Scott Chafin, the lineman, at the top. That play opens quick and closes quickly. Lester Eford is knocked down by linebacker Vic Taylor.
And this is where you really have to dig down deep. The Georgia Southern offensive line is saying we've got to get the ball in the end zone, and Central Florida's defensive line is saying we have got to stop it.
All the plays on this drive on the ground, so they're chewing up that clock. Raymond has a block, and he's got company out there. He's going to cut up. Excellent pursuit by the Blackshirts. Central Florida's defense, primarily Bob Spitalski at linebacker again, out there turning that play inside. He had a pair of running backs, but it was turned inside in a hurry. Ray Irvin also sticking his nose in there and bringing down Raymond Gross.
So much pursuit, in fact, on that play that on this play, you may see Georgia Southern going with a little misdirection, maybe a fake option left and coming back to the right. We never know.
Georgia Southern calling its final timeout of the game with 9 minutes remaining in the fourth. Eagles up by a touchdown. Let's take this timeout. For the fourth time on this drive, and Georgia Southern has converted on all third down opportunities. Joe Ross leaping, touchdown Georgia Southern. How about that? 4 of 4 on third down. Georgia Southern needing the big plays on this drive and doing it all on the ground and doing it behind Joe Ross.
I called it that time, Phil. I said they'd do a little misdirection. You see Raymond Gross counter optioned out to the left, and then he comes back right, makes the pitch, the perfect pitch, and Joe Ross does a good job of running. Let's see if his knee goes down right here. Maybe it does. I think Joe Ross did not get in the end zone. That should have been second down, but instead they give them the touchdown.
Mike Dallas drills the extra point. Georgia Southern sticking it in the end zone. The Knights giving up a touchdown for the first time this year in the fourth quarter. They had only given up a field goal all season long. On that drive, Georgia Southern converts on third down, 4 for 4. That's efficiency out of your offense. And now the Eagles have a little bit of breathing room, although Central Florida's offense has been on the move. Boy, what a game, Delano. Just when you think Georgia Southern's starting to pull away and the crowd gets quiet, they've taken the crowd out of it. Travis Peoples comes out of the lineup. Tim Stowers' defense doing the job. Rudy Jones is inserted, the backup quarterback for Central Florida. This crowd comes to life. Central Florida gets right back in the game, trailing by a touchdown, until Georgia Southern comes right back on the ground, getting maximum proficiency. All running plays, they go right down the field, and Joe Ross takes it in.
I'd say it's just another Central Florida Georgia Southern game. Yeah, that's what it is. These two teams always play barn burners.
That scoring drive, 12 plays, taking off 5.5 minutes off the clock. 12 plays, 49 yards. Joe Ross from 4 yards on the touchdown front. Let's update you on the World Series baseball game. In Game 4 from Oakland, the Athletics still leading Cincinnati. It's 1-0 and now in the fourth inning.
Cincinnati really surprising a lot of people, taking this 3-0 lead. And of course, they could end it tonight with a win.
Joe Ross so far tonight on 21 carries has 86 yards, averaging 4 yards a pop. 2 touchdowns. Also 2 touchdowns tonight for Darrell Hopkins. Don Norton with the kick. Pat Stewart is deep for Central Florida. Ball is loose. Scramble, picks it up, and he goes down. Tackle made by by Don Hudson, the free safety. He was down there in a hurry. And Pat Stewart had a loose ball. That really hurts Central Florida. They'll take over at their own 10. Let's take a look at that fumble.
Well, Pat Stewart looks up before he tucks it in. And if I'm not mistaken, Pat Stewart has had trouble earlier in the game with the fumble and not being able to handle it cleanly. And Georgia Southern so tough getting down the field. There's absolutely no chance to get the ball back up and running.
Rudy Jones taking over to his 10. Take a look at the score of that game. 31-17. So look familiar? The pass to Montrell Green, out of bounds. Gain of 5, Mark Giles, the free safety. Sure, that score looks familiar. The last 2 years, 31-17. And that's after an outstanding game in 1987. 31-17, 3 years in a row. I think there's still some more offense left in this game. 8:45 remaining in the fourth.
If it ends 31-17 tonight, there could be a full-scale investigation.
Dan Shoemaker on the ball there in the truck. Thanks, Dan. Rudy Jones on second down. Again to his fullback, Montrell Green. First down for Central Florida, Jim Mutimer. And Shane Maxwell, the linebacker, there to bring him down.
Gil Smith doing a good job of rushing Rudy Jones, and even when he doesn't get to Rudy Jones, he gives him a love tap afterwards. If we can stay on it, he says, "Hello, Rudy." He pushes him right back into another Georgia Southern player, so they're making Rudy pay for staying in the pocket.
Montrell Green with a gain of 12. Make it first down at the 28. Clock on the move, under 8.5 minutes remaining. Jones again. Green again. Or check that. Yes, Montrell Green, the fullback. Boy, he had Giacone, the tailback, and Green, the fullback, there open. Mark Giles, the free safety, comes up to make the stop. Another first down for Central Florida. Got to have respect for Rudy Jones, who bounces off the bench here in the second half, and he really puts a charge into this offense.
I think you have to have a lot of respect for the entire Central Florida team. Nobody has given up, even though they are down 31-17.
Brett Cooper in motion. Jones again. Dickinson incomplete. Mike Dickinson had just made his turn, had just made his cut, and the ball was there on top of him. Same thing for cornerback Rodney Oglesby. Rudy Jones, 9th attempt already tonight. Make that his 10th attempt already. Has completed 6, and he's really fired up this offense.
At that time, Rudy just a tad long on the throw. Dickinson had indeed run the curl pattern, and he was wide open in front of Rodney Oglesby. Lucky that wasn't picked off.
Mike Dickinson goes to the top of the screen. Sean Beckton at the bottom. That's a blitz control package by the offensive backs. Jones to Giacone. Gets free from Michael Berry and knocked out of bounds. Mike West and Rodney Oglesby knocked Mark Giacone out of bounds, but not before Giacone penetrates Georgia Southern territory and picks up another first down. Clock on the move at 8 minutes remaining.
We've talked about the fine play of the running backs here tonight. Look at Giacone with those strong offensive legs. I understand he is a strong player for Central Florida as well. He bench presses quite a bit.
Jones getting chased by Patrick Carr. By Busaletti, he gets free. Oh, a collision by Georgia Southern's defenders, and Rudy Jones picks up another first down. A gain of 16. That's Michael Berry bent over, and Curtis Gordon. Wow, what a collision. That might be the best pop tonight, and they inflicted upon each other.
Well, they won't have too many good words for each other when they get back up. Look at them take. Ooh, what a hit by Michael Berry. That was a good forearm and everything, and he did it to his own player. Oh, my goodness.
Rudy Jones has been effective in the air and on the ground. 4 times he's pulled it in, and he has totaled up 22 yards on 4 carries. Excellent scramble. 7 minutes and 38 seconds remaining in the game. Looking for Beckton. Overthrown. Rodney Oglesby there on the coverage. Flag down at the line of scrimmage in the area where normally holding is called. And yep, that's the preliminary indication against the Central Florida line.
Well, it was obvious something was up.
Central Florida.
It was obvious something was up because nobody had penetrated in the backfield. So you figured somebody had to be doing something illegal. And here you see it, number 99 for Georgia Southern, Alex Mash. Looks like his defender got a hold of his jersey.
Looked like Derek Connor just had a fistful of jersey on both sides and wasn't going to let go. Alex Mash, a bit undersized, the freshman out of Thomasville, 6 foot, 230 pounds, but man, is he quick. First down and 20. Jones gets it off somehow. Oglesby turns around. Boy, he threw that up for grabs. The safety blitz, Brad Allman from Sylvania, Georgia, the junior, backup safety coming free, and he had a hand on Rudy Jones. Franco Grilla has already been busy tonight. And with 7:18, you know Central Florida has to come away with some points tonight. But Grilla would be kicking into the teeth of a stiff breeze here at the open end of the Citrus Bowl. Knights trail the Georgia Southern Eagles 31-17 with 7 minutes remaining in the game. Second down. Jones has 5 men out. Almost just off the fingertips of Mark Giles. Intended receiver, sophomore Brett Cooper. When Jones has been off, he's been off high or by leading his receivers too far.
And he's getting a lot of pressure, and even when he does get the ball off, he is taking some shots back there. Much to his credit, he is getting right back on his feet and getting under center.
Georgia Southern displaying some depth across the defensive front. Curtis Gordon, Alex Mash in there. Also Big Tim Brown. Darius Dawson, an outside linebacker. He's a speedy freshman as well. Third down in a bundle. 7 minutes remaining in the ball game. This is 4-down territory, and Rudy Jones is going to think about it. He was gazing in the direction of Brett Cooper and Sean Beckton. Central Florida takes a timeout. We will as well. With 7 minutes remaining in the ball game, Central Florida has 1 timeout remaining. There's some anxious band members standing by at a nerve-wracking juncture in this game. The Knights trail by 2 touchdowns. This is 3rd down and about 20. If you're thinking 4th down, the Knights are 2 for 2 on converting 4th downs tonight, and this is definitely 4th down territory in the ball game. Jones has 4 men out, and looking deep, Beckton is open, and he is overthrown. Senior Sean Beckton had 2 steps on corner Rodney Oglesby, but Rudy Jones couldn't stick it in there.
Was so close, and yet so far Beckton had split the seam between the cornerback and the safety, and he was really wide open. Rudy Jones, as we have said, has been sometimes a little long, sometimes a little wide, and that certainly hurt Central Florida on that particular occasion.
Well, Gene McDowell says forget 4th down here with 4th and 20. On comes Russ Salerno, the punter. Rodney Oglesby stands back at his 10. Punting into a stiff wind. Oglesby takes it at the 7. Trying to get outside. Up to about the 18-yard line before he was hustled out by about 3 black shirts. Well, last time Georgia Southern took it down the field and Joe Ross scored from 4 yards, and on that drive, every play a running play.
Well, Georgia Southern is so tough with the option, and the option is just like any other thing. When it's working, it's hard to stop, so make me stop it. That's what Georgia Southern was saying to Central Florida. And Raymond Gross was hot. He was getting to the corners. He was making the right decisions at the right times. And when he got the ball off on the pitch, his backs, Daryl Hopkins, Carl Miller, Joe Ross, doing such a great job of running the ball. Why not run the option? Why not run the ball?
Joe Ross, for a pickup of 2, sets that clock in motion. 6:45 remaining in the ball game. Eagles on top by a pair of touchdowns, 31-17.
As it is right now, with the way Georgia Southern is eating up the clock, it will be a cold day in Florida, Central Florida, before they go to the air, I guarantee.
Carl Miller on the pitch. Stacked up, stiffened up by Ray Irvin, the right corner. The senior from Ormond Beach, a transfer from the Akron Zips up there for Jerry Faust. Outstanding play by Ray Irvin.
That's right, because now Ray Irvin has given Central Florida a chance to stop here on 3rd down, whereas if he does not make that tackle, Carl Miller could evade him and get the 1st down yardage.
A cold day in Central Florida. They could use one of those now to get rid of these mosquitoes, actually. 5:50 remaining in the game. 3rd down. That's a 1st down. And the pitch to Carl Miller, who's still on his feet. Raymond Gross, what effort. Keeps his feet and makes the pitch. Ray Irvin, the corner, out there to bring down Carl Miller, and he was making good second effort, nearly slipped out of that tackle.
It was a good effort by Raymond Gross, but is it necessary here? He's picked up the 1st down. 5:42 left on the clock. You're leading by 14. Why make this pitch? It's almost borderline of being
a forward lateral.
Forward lateral, yes. Why do that?
I think Carl Miller was in front of Raymond Gross, but the pitch might have been to the lateral.
Look forward to me, I have to be honest. But the referee did not call it.
Georgia Southern leading 31-17 with 5.5 minutes left in the game. Joe Ross right behind his center and tackles. Rex Nottage, the right tackle, out in front and leading. That's Paul Lounsbury, the assistant head coach of Central Florida. He handles the offensive line, has his men together, talking about containing the Georgia Southern pass rush when they, when they get the ball back.
Look at Joe Ross, 23 for 106. This is when he really gets tough.
Well, coming into this year, Joe Ross was the runaway leading candidate for the Walter Payton Award, the equivalent of the Heisman Trophy Award for Division I AA. He had that knee surgery the same day last year that Tim Stowers was named head football coach of Georgia Southern. He's lacked that secondary burst because of the knee. Opened the season with what he said at about 85 to 90% full strength. He's lacked that burst, but tonight with his 100-yard effort, he's looked very strong. There's the pitch. Carl Miller. First down, and the clock on the move, although he dances out of bounds, and there's a flag down. Let's see if we can catch the preliminary personal foul or maybe face mask. Difficult to catch the preliminary indication.
Number 80, Daryl Belser, is the culprit.
There's clipping, Georgia Southern.
Once again, the wide receivers for Georgia Southern doing a good job of blocking downfield, but at key times in the ball game, they have been cited for either holding or either clipping, and I'm sure it's nothing that they think they're doing wrong. They're just trying to be aggressive with the cornerbacks to spring those backs, and that's what they've been taught to do. But sometimes you have to think about what you're doing before you do it.
Well, Joe Ross having a big night, and they'll continue to give the ball to him, and the Eagles are 18-2 when Joe Ross goes over 100 yards. The Eagles' big problem tonight, as it was 2 weeks ago at Huntington, West Virginia against Marshall, penalties. A team record 13 tonight for 137 yards they've been penalized. Bring it back to third down and 7. Joe Ross has Carl Miller. And out of bounds, Buckley out there to Usher along with Bob Spitulski. Bill Stewart also giving chase to Joe Ross. He's out of bounds, shy of the first down. Maybe in that instance, Delano, Coach Stowers would like to see him stay inbounds and turn it up, even take a hit just to keep that clock on the move. It's dead now at 4:20 in the game.
Exactly, and I'm sure he'll mention that to him when he gets over to the sideline in one fashion or another. It may not be as nice as we're mentioning it, of course.
Terry Harvin at his 30 with the wind to his back. Big rush, not in time. High, lazy catch. Mike Dickinson will fair catch at the 22, and there's contact, and there's a penalty.
Actually, no contact. You just have to give that receiver or the punt chance, ample opportunity to make the catch with ample room. And he did not that time.
Interference with a fair catch, non-contact, 5 yards, first down.
The culprit, Al Radford, the senior snapper. Well, let's update you on the Dixie Crystals Sugar scoreboard. At Auburn, Alabama, Florida State leading the Tigers 17-7. It's in the second half. Rudy Jones with 5 split receivers. Dickinson to the 35 and out of bounds. Rodney Oglesby comes up to make contact. Smartly done by Mike Dickinson, a sophomore out of Miami.
You see Rudy Jones steps back, hits Dickinson. He is wide open in the flats. This is the pass route they have been going to, and Dickinson wisely gets out of bounds, and Oglesby wisely gives him a tap to make sure he goes out of bounds.
Pressure, Dickinson again, and again he gets out of bounds. Mark Giles up there to knock him out of bounds. Right now, 5 receivers in this set. Chad Payne, we have not seen much of Chad tonight, the freshman. He's split to the top of the screen, and it's Brett Cooper in a slot to the top. We also have Dickinson and Sean Beckton at the bottom of the screen. Backup tight end G.T. Paris tight in the slot to the top of the screen. Rudy Jones, Dickinson one more time. Won't get out of bounds this time. Mark Giles kept them from getting out of bounds. 2nd down and maybe 4.
Again, this little dump pass that they have been running is not picking them up as much yardage as they need, and Georgia Southern well advised to give up this pass because it is really running out the clock.
Extra defensive backs Brad Allman and Sean Austin into the lineup. Nicely done by Becton, tiptoeing along the sideline. 1st down, killing the clock with 3.5 minutes remaining. Knights trail by 2 touchdowns, 31-17.
There you see Rudy Jones going to that sideline. Once again, they're working that sideline route. When you keep working that sideline route right there, like that, maybe Oglesby, maybe Whitley will get smart and come up and maybe pick one off here.
Rudy Jones. Curtis Gordon giving chase. Mike West makes the knock, but not before. Mike West makes the tackle, but not before Rudy Jones picks up the 1st down. Also there is Brad Allman, the backup free safety.
And really, when you look at Rudy, he seems to have just a little bit more athleticism than Peebles did when he first came out to begin the game.
Again, 5 receiver set, 3:15 left in the ball game. For the bundle, has a man, Dickinson, just off his fingertips. Mark Giles and Kevin Whitley there. Dickinson was open. Also having a step on Whitley was Sean Becton. Immediately flashes in my mind when Becton was open on that deep post pattern. Last time they had the ball, Rudy Jones overthrows the pass.
Yes, he does. And you see Mark Becton break out of the crowd, and Dickinson also broke out of the crowd there with the defensive backs and wide receivers, but overthrown.
6 defensive backs in the lineup for Georgia Southern. Jones. Ball might have been deflected by Curtis Gordon. The intended receiver was Mike Dickinson.
Right now, you better believe Tommy Spangler and the defensive staff, they are telling their players on the defensive line to lay your ears back and come as hard as you possibly can, because I guarantee you Central Florida will be dropping back to pass. There's nobody even in the backfield to hand off to.
3 down linemen, 3 linebackers, and the rest are defensive backs. Here comes the blitz. Jones getting pressure from Curtis Gordon, gets free to the 30, 20, and coast out of bounds. Diving and trying to get a hand on him was Rodney Oglesby. Give credit to Brett Cooper, sophomore wide receiver, for holding his block down at the 20 so Jones could pick up the necessary yardage for the 1st down and get out of bounds, killing the clock with 2:57 left in the ball game.
And give credit to Rudy Jones. He has that athleticism that I just talked about. He knows when the pocket is broken down, when to run, and when to get out of bounds. A good play by Rudy Jones.
Jones picked off by Michael Berry, and he has speed. Berry makes a cut, and he is gone. No flags down. Michael Berry high stepping into the end zone. And with 2 minutes remaining in the game, Michael Berry goes 84 yards in the 4th interception of the ball game. Rudy Jones is down, and the Knights are now down for the count. Georgia Southern leading by 3 touchdowns, and Michael Berry out of the doghouse and onto the highlight reel.
Well, Georgia Southern missed on the blitz the play before, but this time they forced Rudy into a bad pass. There's Michael waiting in the cut. Yes, and he is off to the races. He says, I see 6. Can I make it? Can I make it? Michael Berry has speed. He can go all the way.
They call him the test. And tonight he has passed the test. Central Florida has not. 2 minutes remaining in this game, and Mike Dallas makes it a 38-17 ball game. That might just put this one to bed. It ought to.
Yes, it should.
2 minutes and 41 seconds remaining tonight. Defense again has been consistent and has come up with a big play. 4 interceptions tonight of Georgia Southern, picking the ball off 4 times, also getting pressure on the quarterback, but 4 interceptions by quarterbacks Rudy Jones and Travis Peoples. And we see Ron Johnson, the 3rd-team quarterback, warming up on the sideline. junior quarterback from St. Petersburg Beach, Florida.
And there you see that 84-yard interception return is the second longest in school history. Hugo Rosignol has the longest one. I remember it well against Catawba back in 1983. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I remember Hugo, when he finished, I thought he was getting ready to pass out on the field and die. Hugo, a good friend of mine, and he went a long way to score that 95-yard touchdown and remain in the history books.
Michael Berry delivering the knockout blow, and all we see is dejection on the Central Florida sideline. Michael Berry, quite a story this year. Was suspended for 2 weeks at the beginning of the year. Did not play, did not even suit up for the Valdosta State game. He just was listed on the 2 deep chart a week ago for the first time this year. He's one of the most outstanding athletes on the roster. In fact, a year ago, Irk Russell told me that Michael Berry might have more NFL potential than any athlete who has come through the program. Michael Berry out of Harper High School in Atlanta, 6'2", 216, and you saw that speed. 84 yards on the return with 2:41 remaining. Looks like Tim Stowers will be going now to 4-3, and momentum we talked about at the top of the show. Eagles have 3 wins in a row, and they'll be returning home. Pat Stewart from his 2 again loses the handle, and again Hudson is the first man down. Don Hudson, the backup free safety, makes the hit. A return of 13 yards by a very frustrated Pat Stewart.
What a nightmarish night for him. Yes, he has, as far as fielding the punts, he has dropped 3 of them, as a matter of fact, and he just seems as if he's so anxious to catch the ball and get off to a good start that he forgets that he has to catch the ball. And when you do that, the ball gets a little wet.
Pat Stewart, an interesting story. He comes from Hamilton, Ontario, all the way down to Orlando.
Gee whiz.
Central Florida coaches saw Pat Stewart when they were scouting a quarterback, his high school teammate. Johnson is into the lineup. We do see 3rd string quarterback Ron Johnson for the first time tonight. This is not, again, this is a common occurrence where they just go to the hot hand and try one guy. To me, Rudy Jones has been on the mark. He's moved the team. Difficult to duplicate what he's accomplished in this game, but they go. Coach Gene McDowell will go with Ron Johnson for the final 2:36 of the game.
And some disappointed Central Florida Knight fans, but I tell you what, their team has nothing to be ashamed about. They came back and kept fighting, and they still haven't stopped fighting. And hats off to this Central Florida Knight team. They are going to be a good one in Division I AA, a welcome addition.
Well, you can see highlights of this game and look ahead to the next opponent. Savannah State on the Tim Stowers Show, Wednesdays at 6 o'clock on the Sports South Network. That's Georgia Southern Football 90, Wednesdays at 6 on Sports South. Ron Johnson will try the 5 split receivers with 2.5 minutes left. There's Dickinson cutting upfield this time. Mike Dickinson brought down by Mark Giles, the free safety.
Dickinson has had a big night in the last 3 or 4 minutes of the ball game. He's caught an awful lot of passes.
Dickinson has 4 catches tonight in the second half alone. 4 catches for 39 yards. He's been the primary target.
We talked about earlier, Goforth, the matchup with he and Steve Busaletti or Giff Smith or anybody on that defensive line. I would have to say that the Georgia Southern defensive line wore Goforth down, but a tremendous effort from Goforth tonight.
Ron Johnson, Dickinson in and out of his hands, and Michael Berry lurking, pounding footsteps coming to. Well, here's one of the key statistics of tonight. Defensive reversal. Average points allowed throughout the year, only 16. In fact, this is the year of the Central Florida defense. However, tonight, they've given up not 31, but 38 points tonight. Or check that, the defense, rather, has only given up 31 points. Of course, that last touchdown coming on the interception. Ron Johnson looking for Becton. Nice grab. See if it's out of bounds. It is, and incomplete. Central Florida had a talented receiver here a couple years ago, Bernard Ford, who now plays for the New Orleans Saints. John Becton has rewritten, completely erased the record book, and he too will get a glance at the NFL when the draft rolls around. It's a talented receiver. 2:13 left in the game, and Russ Salerno going to finish this thing out. Frankly, I'm puzzled. What do you got to lose on 4th down, Delano?
Why not? You brought in a new quarterback on the last series. Why not go for it? That's why I'm not a coach, though, I guess.
Rodney Oglesby. Fair catch at the 35. Well, we're staring straight dead ahead at letter sweater time here with 2:05 remaining in the contest. Georgia Southern 38, Central Florida 17.
Started off to be a nasty night here with a little bit of rain at the beginning of the game, but that is cleared, and it was a nice night for everybody here in Orlando.
Our thanks tonight go out to University of Central Florida head coach and athletic director Gene McDowell and his staff, sports information director Bob Cefalo. We also appreciate the efforts of Georgia Southern athletic director Bucky Wagner, head coach Tim Stowers, sports information director Matt Rogers, assistants Tom McClellan and Jim Steffen. Georgia Southern football is produced by Dan Shoemaker. The director is Skip Hill. Our stage manager is Melissa Ward. Jim Radcliffe is the executive producer of the Georgia Southern Sports Network.
Tim Townsend with a nice run there for Georgia Southern. He is a good one, a freshman, and he has turned some heads in Georgia Southern land.
Albert Huntley, the backup quarterback out of Douglas High School in Atlanta on the pitch. Alonzo McGee pounding forward for the first down and keeping that clock on the run. Well, Huntley has not seen much action this year because Georgia Southern has been in tight games throughout. And here's an opportunity. Some celebration on the sideline, and here's another look at that pitch.
But you can see Huntley has a lot of experience, a lot of savvy. He does the same thing Raymond Gross does. He stops and makes the accurate pitch, and he will be a good one for Georgia Southern next year when Raymond Gross is gone.
Huntley cutting it upfield. Brought down by Spitulski. Man, as he played a game, he's had his hands full getting either blocked or reading the pitch throughout the night. He's been from sideline to sideline. Talk about quarterbacks, there's a pretty fair one on campus. An outstanding redshirt class on the campus in Statesboro this year. Charles Bostic from Thomasville was quarterback on the prestigious Super 11 team of the Atlanta Constitution Journal a year ago. He'll give Huntley a run for his money next year. Very tough game, physically tough game. Larry Salazar, the senior linebacker, we saw him on crutches. He was not the only one helped off this field tonight.
And you even wonder why Bob Spitulski is still in the ball game. Truly an outstanding athlete, and you don't want to risk any injury. Just because Central Florida has lost to Georgia Southern does not mean they do not have a chance at the playoffs. They certainly want to get their key players out and get them ready for next week. Central Florida, really a fine ball club.
Whistles only delaying the inevitable here with 12 seconds remaining. Well, let's recap this thing. Joe Ross scores a pair of touchdowns.
Georgia Southern, 5 yards, still third down.
Joe Ross scores on a pair of 4-yard touchdown runs. Darrell Hopkins, a big game, scores on a 27-yard touchdown run and a 47-yard touchdown run. And the defense comes through with 4 interceptions, one of which returned by Michael Berry, 84 yards for a touchdown. There's the clock ticking down. Albert Huntley goes down, and Central Florida goes down. So Tim Stowers extends this streak of dominance in this series against rival Central Florida to 7 in a row, and make the series now 8-1 in favor of the Georgia Southern Eagles. Let's take this break, and we'll be back to wrap up the game from